said that you,
Since the work just came in, they haven't had a chance to look at it.
so,
I don't think that we should, vote, but I think it's worth discussing sort of what we, what we think of the resolution. And did you have a chance to look at what I sent last week and what we discussed?
Did the NYSERDA contract is in?
It's, we have the final version with the drafting comparison, which was circulated, Monday.
Yeah, it was sent to Mary. Did Mary know?
it did not,
Did you close executive session?
Yes, we did.
7:56 p.m.
Right here.
Motion by me to exit.
Seconded by Bruce Minnick.
Okay, thank you.
alright, let's we'll get to that, that's in a minute. Discuss police code of conduct, rules and regulations, so this is what is currently on file. You have, we had asked Mike to, discuss, Mike Lagarde, price to work.
It's tough to quote a price without knowing exactly the extent of the amount of work. So what I set forth to do is to take a look at the current policies and procedures. We don't have a code of conduct.
Right.
I sent Mike an email with a code of conduct that appears to be adopted nationally across the U.S. by a number of police departments and sheriff's departments, and it's not what the feds use, but it's what you could expect to see if you went from department to department to department. The big ticket item that we've been discussing has been off-duty conduct, and so I tried to do a broad search to see what I could find as to what other departments do for off-duty conduct to kind of cut down the amount of time that we have to spend on it. And the legal issue that's always the rub is when do you get to a point where the code of conduct is in violation of somebody's civil rights?
The one that you sent to me was kind of the vague paragraph that even the fire departments have in volunteer code of conduct.
Right, and that appears to be consistent with many of the departments do, and so I called Captain McNamara at the Putnam County Sheriff's Department to get some insight, because I figure with the county law department, they probably have some decent resources, but apparently it's really left up to Bill, who's also an attorney. So Bill does most of the policies and procedures for the Putnam County Sheriff's Department. And I expected that they would have some fantastic manual to hand to their sheriffs, and he said to me that theirs was in the process of being updated and reviewed, and it's at this point on par with, similar to ours, to the extent that that it's not extensively comprehensive, but there's a design method to not having extensive policies and procedures. So he said, look, the best thing I can send you is the Suffolk County and the Nassau County policies and procedures. And what he recommended, which I think is really good advice, is to take a look at what the Sheriff's Department has, and they deal with a lot more than what we deal with on a regular basis. So for instance, if we took the 5 or 10 things that the Cold Spring PD deals with, well, the Sheriff's Department may have 15 more, than what we deal with. So he recommended that we essentially take a look at 2 or 3, and then sit down with the officer in charge, or whomever's in charge of the police department, and run through and see what's realistic for Cold Spring. Much like we do with the fire departments or the volunteer fire departments. There's some that you absolutely need, and there are some that you may not need. And the up and downs that he was giving to me, that he gave to me was, the more expensive you are, you have greater potential to incur liability, because there are more things for people not to follow and not be aware of. And there's certain things that are, an absolute necessity, that have become an absolute necessity in 2014, like, posting pictures from scenes and, on Facebook, and things that you wouldn't think, would occur, but do occur. The perfect example is more of a fire example, but, you know, you go up to a fire and you have guys that don't have their Scott packs on and they're taking pictures and, you know, oh, this is really cool, whatever. And they post it on Facebook and it's the activity or the actions that they've taken are directly opposite what is permitted in their guidelines and whatnot. So it would be helpful to finish gathering that stuff, to send that over to George, and then, I think once I have that, I think I'll be able to say to you guys, all right, well, look, you know, we have to do 5 or 10 absolute necessity, you know, things that are just necessary. And then I can come to you and say, all right, you know, I think it's gonna take this amount of hours, but at a price that not to exceed X. Because if it's open-ended, I mean, we could spend a year working on policies and procedures, but, you know, there needs to be some correlation between what you do and what you don't, and what you're willing to pay for. So, but right now, as far as procedures go, as far as policing, they're not completely insufficient.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. It's the off-duty conduct that's the most worrisome.
Yeah, it typically is. You know, it seems like the bulk of the policies and procedures, or let's say new technology comes out as a procedure for dealing with it. You know, like when we got the infrared cameras, just in general across the county, it was like, it's such a big thing, and now there's a policy and a procedure to go along with it. But Captain McNamara suggested that we look at not actually becoming accredited, but to look at what departments do to become accredited. There's apparently something like 133 different standards, and he suggested kind of going through and picking the ones that were relevant and incorporating those, and with that, we would have a fairly robust, you know, end up with a robust document that police officers could read and understand and not need another degree to figure out what you guys want. So.
That sounds like a reasonable hybrid,
Yeah, well, you know.
a cost-effective hybrid.
Yeah, that's gonna be the key, is you know, Nassau County PD and Suffolk County, they have in-house law departments, and that's what Bill was, or Captain McNamara was saying, you know, they have, you know, a staff of attorneys who can just crank out policies and procedures. They work directly for the PD, and that's not what we have.
The accreditation process it's a choice that each department makes?
It's a choice, yeah.
Does the sheriff's department have to be accredited since they're a county entity, or?
No, there's
they
no,
have a choice?
it's not mandatory, it's voluntary, and, many times it's directly related to how much money you have to do that. It's definitely a feather in your cap, and I'm sure somewhere in New York State, you may be able to, maybe there's some grant availability that's different than if you were not accredited, possibly, but I'm guessing at that. I just assume, you know, maybe that's out there. But otherwise, it's really just, from what I've read on the state's website, it's a feather in your cap to be able to do it and to remain accredited. You know, I'm sure there's a annual or maybe biannual or triannual examination, continued examinations of policies and procedures, and it seems great if you have the overhead to deal with it, and if you, so for instance, if we have 11, 12, 13, 14 police officers, you know, if we had 25 and one was just dedicated to doing that, well, that's fantastic, you know, but that's not what we're dealing with.
I think maybe Nassau. Talk to George. The work we did with the I believe it was the Nassau police for the manhunt. You know, they pretty much said, you know, look, if we ever need anything, please contact them. So I think we'll get the contact of the gentleman that was running the show up here from down there, and we may be able. I mean, I'm sure he'd be more than willing to get you any information you have. You know, reciprocate for the hospitality we showed him when we were up here, so they said if we ever need anything, please.
Yeah, and the key for us really, I think, is just we have to deal with off-duty conduct, there's no question about that, and that's something I don't think is gonna require a significant amount of work. Given that, you know, I think the PD can really cherry pick the stuff that's applicable, and no sense reinventing the wheel if if they've already, if it's been lawyered already, and it's something that we can put into place, then that's great, you know?
Did you get to go through what we already have?
I did, I took a look, well, here, maybe my version's a little shorter than yours, but this is what I have.
I think it's the same.
Is that the one that says rules and regulations on it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one. It's so old, the only pronoun in it is he.
I didn't see that sentence that said the masculine shall be, shall be
be the
considered.
feminine.
Yeah, shall be the feminine.
Anything else under the, code of conduct? So, you let us know.
Yeah, I think, at the minimum, we should continue the discussion on the code of conduct. And then, obviously we have to include, the police department, because no doubt, there might be an issue just handing them the new code of conduct and saying, here, this is what it is. We just need to make sure that, and I'll do this, is just confirm with, that we're not in violation of their PBA agreement, or make sure that it doesn't have to be negotiated as part of it. I don't think that's the case, but I'll confirm.
And, assuming that this isn't, a full-throated, code of conduct and SOPs for an accredited department, how long do you think this kind of process will take?
Well, so the code of conduct is, just so everyone knows, nationally what you see is this 2-page code of conduct. It's not, extensive. It's more like a series of morals than it
It's
is
usually part
black
of
letter law.
their rules and regs.
Right, it's usually,
Separate of.
part one, of the rules and regs, part one, code of conduct. That's usually what you would see. We don't have anything in our rules and regulations that deal with off-duty, but again, if you look at the time when these rules and regulations were adopted, it was a different world.
Yeah, they have code of ethics. Very generic.
Yeah.
They have sexual harassment, so it's kinda,
Ralph, you might be looking at something more updated than what I'm looking at.
2013,
Yeah,
It's
then you
the-
are.
isn't that what it's-
That's very old.
okay?
Okay.
So we need this.
Yeah, you know what?
Everybody needs this then.
Yeah, we should, if we're looking at something that's outdated, then.
Yeah, this is, 2013.
The reason I was asking about the time, that it takes is because as we dealt with last year around this time, I think it was last year around this time, we had an off-duty, an issue with off-duty conduct, and it's something we didn't resolve in the last 12 months, and it would be good to resolve at least that portion of the code of conduct.
Was there any work done immediately following that?
Just the research as to the, there was some legal research that I needed to do about whether, what we could do. And once we found out what we could and couldn't do, then at that point, no, we had another slew of things going on, so we didn't get back to it until just recently.
Till this Halloween.
Yeah, till this one.
But to the point that Mike Bowman made a couple weeks ago when we discussed this, it's Halloween is upon us.
Yeah, well,
uh,
it's
I mean, I guess
possible that
it's-
we could deal with the code of conduct very quickly. And I'll confirm with, Officer Kane and make sure that we're not, doing anything in violation of the PBA agreement. Provided we're not, then I think we probably could move very quick.
Yeah, I mean, can we separate that from like?
Yeah, we absolutely should, yeah.
Cause I think that that's
should-
a more,
Yeah,
pressing.
that's probably the, if anything, the way I look at it is that, the code of examining or trying to put in place a code of conduct has kind of shed a light on, policies and procedures, which, may need updating, but the more immediate need right now is getting a code of conduct in place.
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Yeah. Next, discussion of correspondence received from Attorney Anna Georgiou regarding planning board authority during site plan approval. So,
As we know, since last we met, the letter that we received on the 14th via email was actually shared with the PCNR, and over the course of the week, I think, Ralph, you've spoken with the attorneys Anna Georgiou and Dan Posen.
I did. I spoke to Anna, I spoke to Dan, I spoke to Chuck Voss, and basically the original communication went out to, it was sent to Mary, CC Charles Voss, Dan Posen, myself, Arnie Malloy. And to further the question I had was, I had some question other than the October 14th email that I just spoke about, limited distribution of the letter, copying those names, and whom was the letter shared with during or after preparation, and I was told no one, and that is in no uncertain terms, no one. And then, of course, we found later that it appears to be that the copy in the PCNR unsigned doesn't match the original, which would lead us to believe it could be a draft or something else. At which time I then had our village attorney, Mike Ligori, call that attorney to again pose a question. You know, what is this? And again, in no uncertain terms, their answer was, we did not share that with anybody, except for those that were sent to and CC'd.
So they say they have no knowledge of the unsigned copy?
Mike, is that correct?
Yep.
Which
The
is,
one we received last week is the signed copy.
Correct.
the one that was shared was not signed.
How was the unsigned copy distributed?
The-
Well, it's not.
Well, they say it wasn't, right?
That's right.
They say they say they're not the source of the unsigned copy of their letterhead.
How does the unsigned copy differ?
It's unsigned.
Just the signature.
That's it.
So what that means is they're either, they have a breach in their office, I guess, if what they say is true, they didn't fund it. I think it's,
Tim, can you help us? Thanks. I mean, I'm, near speechless. No matter what end you chase, it goes nowhere. FBI, lie detector tests, accusations, we can do them all. What's the end game? What's the result? Who do you accuse? Who do you not accuse? Can preach at how bad that is. The end result is, it happened, it's out there, nobody's fessing up. Does it matter? It's betrayal, I guess. In my personal opinion, it needed to be public anyway once we vetted it. And the whole reason it wasn't read Tuesday when it came in was because everybody didn't get a chance to fully read it. I don't think there's any intentions of it never being released. As a matter of fact, I mean, it would have been a recommendation after tonight when we said we were going to read it anyway to be released. I don't have a problem with the public having it. They need to have it. They deserve to have it. But what doesn't deserve to happen is the decency to let us act through the process. I don't think anybody in this room or in the public thought we wouldn't release it. What is the motivation? What is the end game? You've all seen what's been going on in the village in the last 4+ years. Who knows? It's just a game. It's a game to anybody and everybody who can get it out first, who can be attacked first. To me, I'll be honest with you, I really don't care at this point in time. It's out. Whoever did it, shame on you. Whatever. It's out. And it was going to be out. It doesn't change what's in it. It doesn't change the players. It changes nothing. It's just really, 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 honestly hurtful and disgraceful, but at this point, I don't think many people care. So, at this point in time, what do you want to do? There's nothing, I have zero recommendations because there's nothing I can say or do that's going to bring it back.
I think that the problem for me is that it's from our attorney, and so it does matter that they possessed the document, that they drafted it, and that they have said to us that they're the only people who had it, and yet it somehow made its way from them to the newspaper, and that I think that calls into question the integrity of their office. I don't know who's there that may have sent it.
Yeah.
If that happened, or because I want to believe that when they say to you they didn't, when Anna says I didn't send it to anybody, or that her partner says he didn't send it to anybody, I want to be able to believe them, but it casts doubt.
Do you really think that someone from the law office would actually leak this? What possible gain would they have?
I have no idea. I have no idea, but they said they didn't.
That's a very strong statement to make, Stephanie.
It is.
I mean, they're lawyers, and they not that people don't do things, but I just can't imagine any law firm doing that.
I don't know how to explain how it wound up, how it made its way from them to PCNR. So that's distressing to me. As to its content, I'm concerned that the attorney who drafted it was the attorney who sat at the meeting on September 17th with the planning board and heard from Arnie Sari, Karen Dunn, Anna Pelzeri, and James Pergamo, all expressing confusion and frustration, and that in this first paragraph she refers to them as yet to be identified planning board members. I find that peculiar, and to me it raises questions why she would refer to them like that when she sat with them and had a substantive discussion with them. And also the letter doesn't answer the question that I did email to them. We were all on the email asking her to explain why the planning board was guided to a negative deck when one of the aspects of the law that they were vetting was actually codified, and that was the issue of mass and scale. When throughout the meetings, when mass and scale had been addressed, it was acknowledged as an issue repeatedly, and yet somehow they were guided to issue a neg deck and didn't take mass and scale into consideration. And instead were guided to, instead a letter, a memo, to the village board. That's not a process that makes a lot of sense to me. If it were any other law, it would, except this, in this case, it had the size of the buildings prescribed in the concept plan. And so, it's puzzling. And I think, did you guys watch the video of the planning board meeting on the 17th? Did anybody? Has anybody seen it?
No.
No? No? Okay. If you had, you would have observed Karin Dunn, who was here, talking with Anna Georgiou, saying that during the secret process, her understanding was that she was to wait until site plan approval to address issues of mass and scale. Arnie Sari agreed with her. James Pergamo shared the same sentiment, as did Anna Pellizzeri. So they were confused, and so.
Are any of these in this letter, any of you that clarify some of those confusing issues that they had, or no?
No, and I would encourage you to watch the video and
Well,
then
that's what
read this letter. No, the letter is this letter is a summary from the it's the attorney's perspective of the process that they went through, and I would expect that an attorney who guided them through the process would write a very careful and a careful memo that doesn't refer to the issue at hand. I mean, I think when you get to the reference to the meeting in question, the reference.
Clarification.
Yeah, well, right, but it for the purpose of clarification, it's our view, meaning it's the attorney's view. And up above, she doesn't say that 4 out of 5 board members, felt that, were concerned about the authority. She says at least one member. It's a carefully worded memo. I wouldn't expect anything less. Anyway, this doesn't answer the questions that I have about why they would have been guided to an egg deck. I don't know if it answers your own. I don't know if any of you have you taken the time to listen to audio recordings that the planning board secretary has?
No.
Because those discussions of
It wasn't until you brought something up last week that I first learned of any kind of.
actually I
issue.
have to credit Mike Bowman bringing that up during our interview with B&L.
But that's when I was first aware of anything that we're talking about. When we got this letter, that's all we're going to do is discuss it further, and that's what we need to do tonight. Because some of the things that you're bringing up are things that have to be considered or listened to. Otherwise, I'm still a little bit off on actually what the confusion was. So.
In speaking to them, the yet to be identified planning board members, that came from your accusation that 4 or 5 planning board members. So they weren't named by you, so that is why they weren't named by her.
She knows who they are.
Again, yeah.
The point was that the 4 out of 5 planning board members, none of them came to the village board to voice their concern. We were only going by what we were reading in the paper that was written by you.
You would have been going by, if you did read the paper, you would have been going by Kevin Foley's article about this meeting. an article which the planning board voted to, last week, to attach to their yet-to-be-published minutes of that meeting.
That and comments that were written on phillipstown.info. Excuse me,
Yeah,
that's what I was referencing.
I guess one of the issues is, for myself, is the planning board, 4 to 5, well, during the vote for the neg deck was 4 to 1, was it not?
yeah, it was.
So you know, one of the problems that I have is that if 4 out of 5 had this problem, I don't understand how it passed. And you know, not to, I wasn't there. And you know, from my understanding, you know, the problem that I always have sitting here is that, you know, everybody that's appointed or hired or that works for the village, you know, everybody has their responsibility. And I would never, I'm not an accusational type of person, but at the same time, you know, when your opportunity comes, that's when you have to take it. And again, I don't know, I can't speak for the planning board, nor will I, but when they voted 4 to 1 for the neg deck, that you can't vote 4 to 1 and then have you speak for them and say, oh, they misled me. You got to do something about this.
Well,
And you know, and I understand that, you know, that could have possibly happened. That's not my point. The problem that I have is that when somebody when somebody tells me, well, it passed 4 to 1. Unfortunately, it's my job to have faith in the people that were put there to vote that way. And I don't know if they were misled. I don't know if they were mistrusted. I can't, nor will I, accuse them of being that. The problem I have is that, you know, they had the same responsibility we did. We proposed this unanimously. We proposed the original plan that got to them. And unfortunately, as we see everywhere down the road, we all, hindsight, may have made a mistake. And I don't know where we're going to end up. You know, whether it's compounding, whether it's Anna's, you know, who we want to blame. But and I'm not blaming the planning board because, you know, that's the decision they made. But you know, that was a 4 to 1 vote. And when you said 4 to 5, you know, the 4 to 5 need to fix what they have going on in their planning board. And it's like the chain of command that we pretend exists or doesn't exist, however you want to look at it. You know, there's this chain. You have to, if you have a problem with your chair, you have to take it with your chair. If you can't get it with your chair, you have to take it up with your liaison. If you don't get it with the liaison, you have to go to the mayor and the board. And I'm not saying that that wasn't their intention. They chose not to. They thought it wasn't a good idea. But you know, it's...
Well, has anyone from the planning board come to you directly?
No.
Has anybody from the planning board come to any of the members of this board directly?
I spoke to the member before.
Yes. And she stated as such.
Now, I think I appreciate what you're saying, Ralph, and I'll tell you, last spring, you know, as much as I was surprised, I thought, well, they voted 4 to 1 to issue the neg deck, and that's okay. It's coming back to us, and I relied upon that. But what concerned me, and what I think should concern everyone, is that the statements of our colleagues at that meeting did not sound like people who were resolved and understood that that vote, that 4 to 1 vote, meant what it meant.
Well,
And
I mean,
that was
to speak to your point earlier about us reviewing the video or the minutes of the planning board, how many of the planning board members were at the meeting at the firehouse? They all were sitting there with us in a joint meeting where we talked about mass scale, the concept plan being tied to the site plan, the movement of the buildings. If they enlarge in one area, they're gonna push out in another. These were all things that we sat there and discussed.
Did it occur to you then to think, why would they have issued a neg deck if they had these concerns about these environmental impacts.
They had concerns then, but they were outweighed by if we're going to now go to 3 or 4 stories, then the buildings are going to, are we now allowing them to fill more of the lot, or are we
But that's
gonna
not-
cut them down, or?
Yeah, no, I
It was
understand
very
that.
specifically
the way
tied
that-
to the B4A
Yeah,
law,
yes,
the concept plan, and
That's
that's a
right.
plan that predates this board by 2 years almost.
that's right, that's right.
Who,
But-
I mean, there's people in the audience
That's
who played a large role in crafting that.
But I agree, the conversation did talk about other things other than
I remember
the girth of the building. Wait,
The
let me
notion of
finish.
a coffee
Yeah.
counter being the most important thing discussed that day.
Going back to that day, if people were talking about the mass and scale and wanting to be able to manipulate it and change it, and saying to us, well, they're too large, you know, it didn't occur to you to think, well, gosh, why did they?
No, it did occur.
Why did they, why did they issue a neg deck? Because the question of processing an EAF is to answer the question of whether or not the impacts can be mitigated. Those were not impacts that could be mitigated.
And we had discussions about, and it's in the memo,
Mm.
move the buildings up to 25 feet in any direction and
Yes, we
change the
did.
building orientations by 15 degrees.
We did.
The mass and scale to me isn't a huge deal, it's what it's gonna look like aesthetically that the HTRB is gonna decide that's more important to me.
I don't dispute
And that wasn't our job that day. Our job was to approve B4A so that it could move on to the planning board.
I don't dispute that we were,
But I mean,
we weren't
you also,
actually,
you
that
made
day, we
a
weren't
very,
voting on that.
you made an accusation that this board didn't know what we were voting for either. We did.
No, I didn't accuse, I asked a question.
Well, I can
Is it-
answer you, I did.
Okay, well, I'm heartened, and I think people should feel better about the vote. I think that, the question of, the fact that the question of the size of the buildings continued to be a question in the minds of the planning board, even after they issued a negative deck. And as recently as the 17th, September 17th, indicates that that negative declaration may not have been as well informed and as well understood when it was voted on. And that's what concerns me. We have worked incredibly hard, all of us, even before any of us were elected, except for something wrong.
Thanks.
No, I didn't mean I mean, you were on the board.
Sure.
To try to ensure that this process has been, open and transparent, and that the community has been heard, and that our community as a whole has not been taken advantage of and has not been misled. And so when this kind of confusion arises, I worry. Well, wait a minute,
And then I'm confused because at that meeting, we sat there and discussed a coffee counter for probably, I don't know, a half an hour, 40 minutes.
750 square feet.
I didn't hear people, we weren't discussing the mass scale and, cutting out a building or anything like that. People were talking about a coffee counter.
what do you mean? I don't have the memo in front of me. I know that was one of the issues, so was the size of the
That
buildings.
turned into,
and-
I mean, I don't know if everyone agrees, that was almost, in my mind, that sticks out as what consumed most of our time that day.
Actually, I think the thing that most consumed our time was the request for the 3D model that we hadn't yet received. But that we did receive
I don't remember
the
that
night
being
of the
discussed in
public
great length
hearing.
that day, but
That was also
That was
discussed.
also
it was
discussed.
discussed,
It
but
was,
not as
and,
much as we beat the coffee counter to death.
Well, that may
issue-
be your view.
And as both sides know, for myself, when an issue arises, I go, as you know, today, today was just a mess, but either way, I do my very best to try to vet both sides and see what's going on, and whether one side likes the other, I can't believe, whatever. One of the issues that I always come back to is, what are our options? What do we do now? And in all this confusion or misunderstanding, misleading, whatever the case is, from the legal standpoint, the votes happened. The neg deck was happened, and the 4 or 5 the planning board, they did not come running and screaming about being misled. But further to the point, I guess the question is, what do we want to rescind the neg deck and go down that road? I mean, you know, I'm scared to death.
I don't think the village board can rescind.
No, it would.
Village board, no.
No, it has to come from the issuing board.
Right. So my point being is, you know, this constant handing back and forth was where we started to get in trouble. PUD, but we continue to do it. The neg deck was issued. The issue of misleading, this memo, I mean, it's all right in front of us, and it all happened. The problem we have is, what can you do about it? And not saying that ship has sailed, because we know how that infuriates some of us, I understand that.
I think from day one, the village board had the option to be lead agency. We turned it over to the planning board because
At their
they were
request.
the experts,
At their request.
and the experts voted 4-1. And
Yeah.
like you said, I have not heard the outcry or the people coming to me on the street saying that they were misled.
So, going
And
to Ralph's.
4 or 5 of us agreed, so I don't know what else you wanna do.
So going to Ralph's question of sort of what are the options, what can we do? I guess the planning board could rescind the neg deck. The village board could ask the planning board what kind of, you know, if people are saying, well, it's too large, we thought we'd have authority to make it smaller, if the planning board has an idea of what size would make them comfortable, we could consider, the legislative body could consider amending the zoning, the B4A zone to.
Could you, after the neg deck has been issued?
You can do whatever you want, you're the board of trustees, you could change the law, you'd have to re-examine secret on the law.
Would be day one again.
Yeah.
So if the planning board in its work feels like its hands are tied by the existing zoning, that they don't have the authority that they need to deliver what they feel is best for this community, we could ask them, well, what are the parameters that would make this work for you? And we could contemplate that amendment. I guess those are we could rescind the neg deck could be rescinded, but it had to be done by the planning board, or the village board could amend the B4A zoning.
There's a standard to be applied on a rescission, which is if the issuing board is in receipt of new information or additional information that comes to light that would shed an impact on the determination. So that's number one, that's a standard that has to be met.
Which in this case,
Do
does
you
that
think
exist?
that exists in this case?
New information?
Yeah. I mean, is it sufficient to say, wait a minute, I misunderstood, or I thought we were gonna.
New information and misunderstanding of
Those are
existing, I don't know that.
Well, I think the court would probably answer that one.
Right.
And that was my next
You know what I'm
question,
saying.
is what are we getting ourselves into here legally? By even
Well,
having this discussion right now.
No, you could have there's no, you don't acquire liability for having a discussion, I mean, you could.
But if we were to choose to write a letter to the planning board asking them to rescind their neg deck,
We would, both boards, from a litigation perspective, it it almost doesn't matter, you know, what board does what, cause the village gets sued, it's different boards, but it's one village, so. If the planning board did it on its own and the developer determined to commence litigation, it would be against the planning board, but it's your insurance policy, I mean, that's, you know, to the extent that it's even covered. It's a land use case, that's a question, okay? We have the land use coverage, but, you know, Article 78s generally are, you know, unless they have some component that deals with civil rights, you pay for them out of pocket.
I guess the issue I'm having is that I don't have all the dates in front of me. When was the B4A first introduced with the concept plan?
As a zoning amendment,
Yes.
well, you get into statute of limitations, is that the question?
No, when was it first introduced? When was the concept plan drafted in conjunction with B4A?
Oh, that was way before my
Probably
time.
in 2012.
We're talking almost 3 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I came on in
So
September
if there were
last year, so
issues
before.
with mass and scale, why weren't they addressed in the initial concept plan that was tied to the B4A rezoning? Because what it comes down to for me is,
That's a good question.
Were we-
I don't know the
were
answer
we-
to that.
were we misled or were you confused about what you were voting for? Because I wasn't.
I was not confused, I voted no. I knew what was being
That's
asked
your
of us,
prerogative.
and
That's your
yeah,
prerogative.
it is.
Right.
But I don't think, that's not really on trial here, I mean, I think that
No, but the question was, has new information come to light to meet that standard? And I don't think it's been around for 3 years.
well, that's, the rescission, right?
Yeah, that's
Part of
that's on the rescission, so,
I mean,
there's no standard for the board on, you know, adopting additional
Sure.
legislation. It's-
yeah, I personally have no desire to, change the legislation or write a letter to the planning board. As lead agent, I truly believe it is their job to tell us when they have been, if and when they have been wronged. And my personal opinion is, as I always trust all our boards, and I said it time and time again, if they want us to change the legislation, that is on them, and that is my personal opinion, and it is my professional opinion. They wanted lead agent. We gave them lead agent. If they were misled, mistrusted, whatever their case is, again, I mean, yes, it's our job to look after everybody, but we have systems in place to do that, and they're one of the systems. And, you know, they told us they wanted to be lead agent because they were the professionals to handle that. We entrusted them with that, and I'm entrusting them again where if they want us to change the legislation, that is their job to ask us, and then it is our job to decide. I think for us to say, well, we don't trust that they were mishandled, we're going to change the legislation for them. I just really think that is a serious, I mean, to have this conversation is kind of, you know, questionable about, well, what are we doing here? But again, as I say, it's my job as mayor to make sure that when somebody brings something up, it doesn't get pushed under the carpet. And, you know, the whole accusation, you know, we went through with that. Trustee Hawkins made an accusation, and I said, you know, when some people weren't in favor, said, yeah, we'll look into it.
I really want to correct the record.
I'm sorry.
I never made an accusation, okay? I asked,
Statement.
I expressed concern
Okay.
about, I observed confusion on the part of our colleagues
Right.
on the planning board, and I expressed concern about it and wondered what that meant
Right.
for what did that mean for the zoning that we had adopted? And what does that mean for what we're looking at now? And I appreciate the time of the board
Absolutely.
talking about this.
And it is the right thing to do, and I believe it's the right thing to do, and I believe that that's what we're supposed to do. At this point in time, I am not willing to push lead agent aside and say, well, you didn't do this right, we're changing. You know, if they want us to, that is, you know, they voted 4-1 for the neg deck. Whatever, you know, that's the way it went. So my personal feeling is they should have known, as we should have known what we voted for, and we did, 4-1, as they should have known and they did 4-1. If they have been wronged, I truly believe it's their job to right their wrong. And if they want us to change that, they need to tell us that, and then we need to wrestle with, are we going down that road? And again, that is my personal feeling. I am one vote, one member of this board. You know, that's how I feel, and you know, I'm not. I have
Actually,
doesn't matter to me.
I understand what you're saying, and I just wanna add to that, I think that, it's not just the planning board that we answer to the entire community, and a lot of people have invested a lot of energy and
Correct.
time and, emotional attachment to how the process is gonna turn out, because we all live with what is built there for a long time. And so it's not just the planning board saying, oh,
No, it's not.
it's too big, we're massive scale, it's, if the community is concerned about this conversation, that was reported on, which is recorded.
No, and that's another valuable point. What we tend to do here when we talk about our constituents in the community, it's usually at a one-sided meeting, and you see that all the time. And again, no disrespect, but in fairness, if you voted here, you know what these constituents are pushing for. And the last time this happened, we had two public meetings, and one was full of one side, and one was the other. And so it's incredibly hard to sit through a meeting of constituents when you know that maybe they're not your constituents, even though they are. And
Why
look,
is that hard, Ralph?
it's really hard because that's. I mean, I'm foolish to believe that I can get something done for everybody. Obviously, foolish is the main word there. But so it's not. And when people want to say, oh, "I can't believe you voted for that," and deep in my heart, I'm thinking you're not saying that because you think I wronged you. It's just not the project that you thought it would be. That doesn't mean the way I vote had anything to do with not believing the project was the perfect project. Impossible. And I said this before, unfortunately for me, or fortunately, I've been here my whole life, and it happened. Springbrook, Forgegate, Chestnut Ridge, Riverfront Condos, and here at Butterfield. And then next year or the year after, it's going to be Marathon, and then it's probably going to be redevelopment. So, it's okay that you're not happy with what's going on, but don't think that everybody, the way they voted, had anything except what they thought the best intentions of that project was. And I completely understand and agree that, look, if there is a question of, misleading, again, people said, I can't believe you entertained that. Well, that's the least I could do. Now, what comes out of it, I have no control over. I brought it up, we discussed, it was right thing to do. I spent days, tracking down who allegedly leaked it, didn't leak it. It was her job to produce this because, as you said, she has no choice. She has to protect what she did. And I'm not looking to put the onus on the planning board because we do represent everybody. Unfortunately for me, there are a bunch of systems in the whole cog that have to be relied on. I mean, we had this fight with the HDRB and Seth. Look, the boards have to do their jobs as we do, and sometimes we as parents have to step in, and other times we have to let the children fight and come to us when they can't resolve their fight. And I personally, I don't care what happens. Either way, this sucks for me, but it doesn't matter to me because the planning board says to me, look, we truly believe we were wronged. Put it in the simplest terms, and then what are you telling us? And I'll say it again publicly, I had a bit of an issue with that memo that said, we, the planning board, want you to look at these things and give us a determination. As a non-planning board trained person, that didn't help me. One bit because what are you telling me you want to be able to look at in site plan review? Because I'm not going to site plan review. And they said, well, we want you to tell us what it looks like. You're the planners. So for me, it wasn't, I never misunderstood. It was just a hard process to understand because it more or less didn't make sense than misunderstanding. But unfortunately, from day one when the PUD got messed up, it's been a series of issues that we backtrack, go back and forth on, and we're here at another bridge. What are we gonna do? I don't know. As I said before, I'm not willing to do anything unless the planning board really cries foul. That and that's just my opinion. And I'm 1 of 5, and I vote. I have one vote, just like the rest of you when we're sitting together. So, as far as I'm concerned, I investigated this question, and I wasn't misled. I was of course hoping that in the process, the planning board would say, hey, we don't want 45, what are you gonna give us? But that's negotiation, based on our law, he could say nothing, 55 units, that's what the law stated. You know, but I never misunderstood. I don't believe, I was not misled, and, you know, I voted because in the overall picture, that's what I thought was what the project should look like based on information I had. And, you know, for me, it was always I could say no all day. What is the result of saying no? What's it gonna cost you to say no? And, you know, and you said no, and you know, and I completely respect that, because that's. No, but the whole board didn't say no, and, you know, we didn't enter into, you know, litigation either. You know, so it's just, and again, you know, you don't rule by litigation, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, and you know, that's my rant. I'm allowed to, because I sit here, and, you know, I work for you, and the planning board is lead agent. So if lead agent has a serious problem, it is in their best interest to make it known to us, but I'm not jumping on them. And, you know.
What happened to the joint meeting? We had some reason.
The joint meeting, basically I thought it was a good idea, at the meeting, and, you know, when I backtracked, you know, I looked at it from the point of view as their lead agent, and I didn't know what, again, you know, it's like your kids, they're fighting, lock them in their room, figure it out. If you can't figure it out, then the parents will deal with it. And that's the way I looked at it. The planning board, I didn't want to make it look like the planning board doesn't know what they're doing, we're having a joint meeting to straighten them out. That's not what I wanted it to look like. I was like, look, the planning board has the problem. They need to qualify what went on, what this says, and if they aren't happy, satisfied, or think it's right, they need to tell us. You know, that's why I backtracked on let's have a joint meeting, because
No, but if there was some confusion that created this whole thing we're discussing tonight, it might be something that we want to relook, I think. I don't know what the answer is, but I think we have to get some clarification, and we're not getting it if we're gonna rely on bits and pieces coming back to us from so many members of the planning board, if they decide to do that.
look, I believe, I have clarification for my mind based on, you know, what I don't have clarification is, you know, the leakage, but whatever. I mean, I have clarification on the way I voted, this memo, and, you know, this memo was sent to the planning board on purpose, and they need to decide if they're clear. And that's my position. And it's just simple and no disrespect, but if they don't have a problem, they voted 4-1 for the neg deck. They don't have a problem, I don't have a problem.
I have to say that I disagree with a whole bunch of what you said.
Good for you.
Even if people would vote for someone else, you know, they're still our constituents. But I think you hit the nail right on the head when it comes down to the memo that was given to us from the planning board before we approved B4A. It could not have been more clear than that. When we sat at that table that day and the attorney told us that a yes vote here, this site plan is tied to this law, and these are the specific dimensions that you will be able to move buildings, and we voted, and I think we were all pretty clear that day what that vote meant. So, I don't see how, where the confusion comes from in terms of the planning board. And like I said, if 4 or 5 planning board members were calling me, stopping me on the street, telling me that they were misled, how dare we do this, I'd have a whole different opinion, but not one of them has reached out to me.
Anything else?
Can we ask, one of our planning board members who's here a question?
Are you willing to answer questions? You don't have to.
I don't think this is the time or place for me to answer questions.
I respect that.
At our planning board meeting, feel free to ask.
Well,
Thank you.
but, I would, but your chair is very, articulate articulate about not letting people ask questions. And will only
I'll
let people
talk to him
comment.
about it.
So, because I'm still interested to know why you did say what you said about waiting.
At the
And
planning
being
board
told.
meeting,
Mhm.
we'll talk about it.
Good.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to it.
Discussion of proposal from Vistouch Productions for posting video recordings of board meetings. Hello all. From Ellen, yeah, does everybody get one? Okay, Mary requested that I look at the budget to determine if there is any place in the budget that we can get the money to cover the cost of putting the meetings on YouTube. Assuming 2.5-hour meetings for the rest of the year. Good luck. Assuming 2.5-hour meetings for the rest of the year, the total cost would be $350. Currently in our permit waivers, vendor park, another revenue line, we are over budget. $295. We anticipate that we will receive additional revenue for this line item. So my suggestion would be that to increase this revenue line by $350 and increase the board of trustees videotaping line by the same amount to cover this cost. So what I'm getting from that is that there is money available. If I think, again, in this OML world we live in, and thirst for information, I think it's only fair and right that, there is access, everybody has it now, but I think just to put out that much more access is I want that many more people watching. But I think it's the right thing to do, and Ellen has basically said it is doable for the budget, so, questions, comments?
Completely in favor of it. My only suggestion would be to hold off until we do our site visit with the town of Fishkill
Okay,
on October 31st.
that is the,
It's Halloween.
It's Halloween and it's in question, that it might, so
It might
it
cancel? The-
might move to the 5th of
okay,
November.
and that, the purpose of that visit is to,
Look at their setup up there because they worked in conjunction with Cablevision to have their setup done the most efficient, most up-to-date way.
so this is a good request, pending that that's not a better idea or deal for us.
Well, I think ideally moving forward is this would be tied in with
Okay,
a proposal.
okay, so do we want to wait till you come back with that information?
I mean,
Is this supposed to be for all of our monthly meetings and our workshops, or is this
I think it's only for monthly. That was a question I had for her.
Only for monthly.
Yeah.
And that's, I shot back to you guys
Yeah, I saw
via
that.
email about possibly talking to Cecilia about what it would take to cover our workshop
Workshops?
meetings too. Cause we've had discussions all the way from, an iPod Touch to, newspapers doing the coverage. And I think to really take out any accusation of, editing or favoritism or any of that stuff out of the equation completely, you need a third party to really take this over. So, and she does a great job at our monthly meetings, and we've had preliminary discussions about what it would take to increase the coverage like the town does to their workshops.
And how much does it cost us to have her at our monthly meetings,
$300.
each meeting?
Yeah, the yearly contract is $4,000, I think, something like that. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
That's right. So this would, so that it would quadruple. A lot more.
Well, that's the thing, is if we're gonna have a workshop every Tuesday in the month, rather than just one monthly meeting and 2 workshops.
So, can we record and get it to her?
That's an option, we can talk to her.
And what would she do with it? She would improve the sound?
Well, that's the thing, is to wire this room for sound and a static camera, the second that we put the equipment in here, it's outdated.
But how much will it cost for that outdated?
We've gotten
We had that, what was it,
estimates.
5,800,
Yeah.
6,800?
The real problem behind it is the soundboard that the microphones hook into and all that stuff. And then, if it breaks, we're responsible for replacement and for repair. just a camera that we set up on a tripod or something, and we're responsible for editing and getting that
It
out.
wouldn't be edited, it would be unabridged.
Well, I mean, you know, putting a splash page on the credits.
So do we wanna hold off on this till
Yeah, I think so, because
Let's wait
it's
until
either the
it seals
31st or
tomorrow.
November 5th, we're gonna have a joint site visit with the Fishkill with the town board.
So for now, go to your local go-to for the meeting, the workshop meeting.
Excuse me.
Consider public restroom maintenance proposal. Did you,
I spoke with Greg.
okay,
And, this, we 2 days a week, 2.5 hours per, which is quite cheap, whether or not we need that much time. And then I also said, well, it comes to $2,600 for the remainder of our budget year. That's if we just have it done twice a week now, when there's a lot of tourism, and maybe once a week in the winter months, and then bring it back twice a week in March, April. I talked to Ellen about this morning as well, and it all depends on some of the funds from Grove or whatever we're using for the utility program and things.
that girl one's going far,
Wait,
huh?
the grove is, it keeps giving,
Well,
right?
that's, no, so that's what
I
amounts
think
to.
I can safely say you can have the money, you don't need it for the holiday.
So there's money in that area if we decide we wanna use that kind of money to compensate for this,
Yeah, as it stands now, what happens, the restrooms at the bottom of the hill, Greg and Scott from the highway, they go down and you know, it's kinda like their morning clean and,
Greg and Scott from
from
water.
water, wastewater, you know, and the first few years it was okay, cause it was new and it was clean and it was, less used, I guess they would say. Unfortunately now, that bathroom is crazy
Mhm.
busy.
It is.
And what happens is A, we haven't been keeping up on the maintenance, and B, it is a lot, for, non-cleaning personnel to take care of, and it's just, you know, it's one more thing that, you know, there's 2 guys for wastewater and water for the whole village, and it's just, my personal feeling is I don't think it's fair that, you know, they're cleaning bathrooms.
I think it's gotten beyond just the cleaning part.
Sure.
It's
It's-
actually broken plumbing and broken fixtures and things like that.
It is that, but I mean, that's general maintenance stuff. When you talk about cleaning, honestly, I don't wanna go into
No, no,
graphics,
no.
okay? But at any given moment, they can be clean and at another moment completely
Sure.
unusable.
Sure.
And, you know, I mean, you can, I
I
don't know.
mean, I think a
You
safe
need a
thing
power
to,
washer every other visit.
yeah, I think the safe thing to do is thinking out loud here, is, you know, with these cleans, you know, the multiple times a week, and then, you know, we can continue to ask Greg and Scott to daily check and,
My father does check it when he's there, and basically I think he stops, finishes Veterans Day, basically it's Memorial Day, Veterans Day. And he said the best day for it to be cleaned would be a Thursday, because that was before you go into the weekend. If you're gonna, so a one-time cleaning, Thursday would be the best day. Probably, I mean, I don't know if this person can do it on a Saturday or a Sunday, but you'd almost, if you're gonna do it twice a week, it would almost be like Wednesday, Saturday,
I mean,
Wednesday,
He
Saturday.
recommended Monday or Tuesday and Friday. That was his recommendations, and I think he's here in Cold Spring,
Monday and Tuesday.
That-
Monday
no.
or Tuesday
Oh,
and
oh, oh.
Friday.
That doesn't make any sense because,
It's cleaning it right
The
after.
high impact, days are gonna be our weekend days,
Yeah.
and,
Well,
I
it's
saw
cleaned right after our weekend.
heaps of
on
people
Monday
coming
morning.
off the train this last weekend, and they all, I thought they were gonna stride into the village and shop, and no,
Run
they
right to the
strode right in and stood in line.
But I thought it was never much better.
Yeah, it's true. I should go buy a sandwich and use the bathroom.
I mean, at the very least right now, rather than have 2 members of the water department who are 2 rather highly trained employees, have them scrub toilets and sinks, I mean, right now we use the highway department to clean the bathrooms down at the baseball field, right?
Joey cleans them, and that's not the highway department, it's the
Joey Russo.
Joe Russo, basically,
Yeah, it's something
the,
that he can
field
do
maintenance.
to get us into the slow season, so that I mean, all winter long, that bathroom's not gonna be getting
No.
used like it is now.
With the work that he has currently going on, other than his newest job, I don't think he can handle that.
Have
When he
we
first
asked
started, he was like, yeah, do that.
Do we have, do we know how many times we need to clean this between now and the end of our season? I mean, assuming we're gonna clean it at least twice a week. Do we have it?
Well, you're looking to say, what, till, first week of December, whatever, so you're talking 6 weeks?
Well, it's 9 Mondays until Christmas, if anybody wants to know.
Six weeks,
How
twice a
many
week.
shopping days?
5 weeks and
64.
Thanksgiving.
C Street's coming in until November
497.
15th, so you're gonna have those massive crowds coming in until the middle of November, so
Yeah, it's the end of October.
if you go right to our candlelight in our, the first weekend of December, and then we bring it one day a week, I think we have to do it 2 days a week.
Till candlelight though.
So
Yeah, candlelight.
is there money for him to, for this guy to do from now, basically trial from now till candlelight?
Ellen said she thought there was, based on, like,
Yeah,
How are we gonna pay him? Week to week? Or we're not signing a contract with him to clean our bathrooms for the next year or something like that?
Right.
$100 a week.
Well, there are 8 weeks or 9 weeks until Christmas, so if he's,
Ralph,
if it's $200
I
every
would-
2 weeks.
I would like to send maybe a letter to some of the nonprofits,
Okay.
I think as we talked about, and see if they wouldn't consider making a donation for its upkeep. Whether that goes towards cleaning or physical maintenance, or both, but, you know, they do, you know, I think that they care enough about putting their information in, or that they might consider contribution. Not either of the newspapers, I would like to say, because they are so both extremely generous with their, the map that the .info does, and the area guide that Mr. Leonard does. They just drop bundles and bundles of them down there, so I think we could sort of exempt them.
Sure.
It's reading material in the bathroom. So we need, it looks like we need $800 if we're gonna hire Ray to take care of our bathroom 2 days a week for the next, through the
I
end
would
of the
say you could
season.
take that from the grove.
So, do we wanna spend some of our growth money?
But that's what I brought up before, it's $800 for the remainder of the, what
The
we call
year.
it, not the year, the
Season.
tourist season, as you say.
Right.
You're still gonna need someone to maintain it once a week until the springtime again.
So
We don't lock them over
And
the
then,
winter?
and then pick it,
I mean, really?
and then
We
pick it
don't
up
close
again.
up.
We
Yeah,
don't
they
close
don't
up?
for business.
So that's where the figure came in at $2,600 for the remainder of our budget year, not our.
Oh,
not our
understood.
calendar.
I mean, I'd be interested for $800, you know, when Ellen can tell us,
To see us through the end
can
of the
see us,
season?
yeah, I would like to see, because we can it's basically a trial run, it's $800, there's money, and,
We can
you
budget
know, and
it
then
for
we can
next
talk to him,
year.
you know, if it's not 2.5 hours, you know, we
Adjust it.
could adjust the time and, you know, pick the best dates, you know, the days of the week and get it.
Bruce,
Right.
did you ask Joe, or do you just sort of know his schedule and think it's too crowded?
I didn't ask him, I know Mike brought up that
Cause he's
last
not gonna
week.
be mowing the lawns.
I'd rather
You know,
see it
normal.
be handled with current employees rather than have to spend more money to take care of a bathroom. People are getting off of the train, they're used to what a train bathroom looks like, I mean, we don't have to have.
Oh, we're not a village with a train bathroom
We
at the
do,
foot
I
of Main
need to tell you,
Street.
we have 2 of them.
I don't have any
That's real
problem
nasty.
with the other one, I can ask him tomorrow.
Yeah, I would ask him, because as I said, he's not gonna be mowing lawns, he may, I mean,
Well, what
I would at least
right.
give him the right of first refusal.
Yeah, and
Well, are we gonna pay him $200 additional every 2 weeks?
is this on tape?
They'll stay within his salary,
Well,
within his
If
hours.
any
Salary
businesses in
employees.
town want a good way of drumming up business, put a nice clean public bathroom attached to your restaurant so that you can
I'll
walk
let
in and use
everybody
it.
use mine, I never say no to anybody.
Alright, so we'll see what Joe can do and,
Talk to Ellen.
talk to him and please make sure that it's on the agenda for the 28th. Consider resolution setting forth terms and conditions of the zoning update committee.
Right, as as discussed last week, one of the appointments to our zoning update committee asked that a resolution similar to that adopted by the village in 2006 for creating the special board for the comprehensive plan local waterfront revitalization plan be adopted by the village for the zoning update committee. The idea is that it sets out terms, describes the mandate, and sets out, you know, the sort of the term over which the appointees will serve. I think Trustee Bowman and Fatty had some interest in talking about this
I think we're,
before.
I don't wanna speak for Catherine, but I think we're in favor of putting forth a charge like that, but we need to read it first. And I haven't, read the contract.
Oh, okay.
So if
idea
we wanna
is
do
that-
it next week or the week after,
Okay, yeah, that's fine, yeah, that's fine, and I wanted to encourage.
We can do both. We can set forth the parameters of the committee
Mhm.
as a special board, and we can do the
Oh,
contract.
and people,
Yeah, because we have,
Okay,
a week.
I wanted to encourage people at the end of the meeting last week, I sent a copy of the 2006 resolution so that people could refer to it and have an idea of what the committee members were asking for.
and
And about,
the committee members themselves, I don't know if they've actually gotten together yet, but
No.
I think there was
No.
some really good discussions amongst yourselves about what you felt the charge of the committee needed to be.
I think it would, if I may speak,
Please.
please,
I think it would be very helpful for the members of the committee to see the resolution that's being proposed. If you think back to the process that was followed by the special board, when the resolution, who already had a resolution in hand, when it came time to have the discussion about the green plan contract, the special board spent quite a bit of time reviewing the green plan contract and provided input, actually
We made a recommendation.
back to the village
To the
board
village board.
as to what the contract should be. So as a suggestion, could we follow the same process whereby the zoning committee could get a copy of the resolution that's being proposed? We have access to the proposal from B&L. If you could also make available to us the
That's gonna help a lot. Yes, of course.
email.
All of this
It's
is
email.
okay.
It's
Yes,
email.
yes, of course you can.
Okay,
The
so
answer is yes.
the proposal
The
that
answer is
you're,
yes.
thank you.
wait, no,
You wanna work with-
enumerate what.
You wanna work with Stephanie on the
what you want.
resolution?
Yes, we will work with Stephanie on the resolution.
But understand that, we can talk about that, but then we'll bring it back and
Yes.
talk with the colleagues on the board, because they'll have input into that resolution.
If you don't have any problem with doing so, we can call a preliminary organizational meeting of the zoning committee so that we can have that discussion. You're okay with that?
Please.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
We will do so.
Discuss,
to discuss the
To
resolution.
discuss all of those
Yeah.
materials.
Okay, I think that's great,
And I think
yeah.
we left it up to you to pick your own chair.
your chair, pick the chair,
Right, we will do so.
the resolution,
We will
the
do so.
information you want.
We will do so.
Okay, good. But let's keep this just on the agenda for next week, the
Absolutely.
resolution. Further to the agreement that was, I guess Mary printed it out and it's in the packets, she didn't
Yeah.
email it,
Right.
but, there's the comparison document that you requested, Mike, is here, and, Michael and I spoke with NYSERDA on Monday, which was when they forwarded the comparison document finally, and, they encouraged us to, make haste. They were eager for us to get back to them with our comments, and concerns, because they're looking at issuing the next round of grants. They have money that's, burning a hole in their pockets, they wanna get that spent on us. So we were asked to do what we can to
Sure.
give them an ETA, and I said I cannot speak for my board. But
Just
I
to
would-
be clear though, that one's the red line and then this one is,
The clean.
there's a clean and a,
can Mary forward us the red line one that's actually color coded?
Oh, yeah, we just have to circulate the email.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
don't think it didn't make it out to us.
yeah,
Okay.
I thought she was gonna forward, there were 3 documents, there's a,
What's busy paying off? Crazy. Last
Let's
question.
Ari, I will follow
We
up.
will talk. We will talk.
Approval of minutes, Board of Trustees workshop, October 7th, 2014.
Make a motion.
Are they in the packet?
There is a motion to approve, is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Oh,
I'm sorry. You good?
Yeah, I looked through the company.
That was it for minutes. Approval of bills,
Anything remarkable?
We do have one from CHA, which we have to go over the contract, so I'll put that off for another week or so.
that's fine.
Motion to approve?
But other than that,
Oh, sorry.
motion that we approve the audit.
Second? Second?
Motion was, second. Any discussion?
I'm sorry. What are you pulling? Which bill are you pulling?
I'm not pulling, I'm just pulling one back for CHA, because we got this for some of the work that we did with the DOT. And I have to review the contract to make sure it's in line with what we agreed on in the beginning, so.
Okay, very good.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Correspondence, we actually got 2, wonderful. One is from Mr. William C. Georgiou, interviewing and hiring, Mayor of Village Board, Tuesday, October 21st, board workshop, we were scheduled to interview candidates, police officer to support responses in opposition to the addition of additional police officers. Also, police department validated and approved you, the Mayor of Village Board to hire if necessary to do so with all the facts and implications in plain view, without smoke and mirrors. There's no way questioning the candidate, his or her desire to join the Coleman Police Department. The only question is why now and what is the financial impact of the village of Cold Spring and its taxpayers? Why hasn't there been hard facts, hours, availability, real costs presented to you for a true evaluation for necessity? Why? Because I indicated it's all smoke and mirrors. Additional new officer the first year creates following costs: uniform allowance, initial training, annual training for a total of $1,600. For every year thereafter, $1,266 minimum according to pay scale. That's $1,624 spent on unnecessary position that can be covered by existing officers, even if it is needed to be covered by overtime, in which, in a part-time situation, is truly only 0.5 times additional cost. Why only 0.5 times? Because unlike full-time positions, the straight time of 1 time is always being paid only to the officer on duty and not anyone not working. Using 0.5 times true addition cost, following summarizes potential savings by utilizing existing members. Additional officer, 1624, 0.5 is 1450, available hours at rate 112, 8 hours a shift. 17 shifts. Consider why can't the shifts be covered. There are 12 officers currently, and must provide 7 available shifts per month. In a month, having 31 days times 3 shifts per total 93 hours to be covered. 12 officers times 7 shifts minimum equals 84 shifts covered, leaving 9 shifts not addressed. But that is based only on 7 shifts per officer. Most officers can do the work 8 to 10 hour shifts per month. Using 8 shifts as an average, the availability to cover 96 shifts. Let's remember, officers may work 5 shifts in a 2-week period until under normal scheduling. Whereas the problem, I personally made myself available 39 shifts in the month of October and 43 shifts in the month of September. Let's take out the 0.5 overtime issue, and the arithmetic solves itself. Plus, how did this issue ever happen? Even happen. Consider this also. In addition, more officers with the current shift allotment means the officer may work 2 days a week, with some more and some less. How does the officer have any knowledge or feeling for the village with minimal exposure to it? Do they know what's going on? Do they know our residents? Do they have knowledge where problems are? Not likely. As a 16-plus year member of the Cold Spring Police Department, 33-year member of law enforcement, plus experience in the business community, I have a major problem understanding the need for additional police officers. Transparency is non-existent in this matter, as it is in the distribution of shifts, availability, assignments, etc. add to it the acknowledgement that another officer is anticipated to be added beyond the current candidate in a numbers double and provide even less coverage with officers with even less ability to know this village. Whereas the respect and consideration for the existing officers who work and know here. I urgently ask that you abandon the concept to hire more officers to do that would further financially burden the village, as well as add more turmoil in the department in disarray. You have much to do to seek the truth in your resolution. Cold Spring is my second home, and I hope to continue to work in the police department. Once again, enjoy my job as I once did. Thank you for your time and welcome an opportunity to further discuss this matter. Respectfully, William Georgiou. Here's another communication. Dear Mayor Falloon and the Village of Cold Spring Board of Trustees, it has come to our attention that one of our PBA members, William Georgiou, has expressed his opposition to the possibility of the village hiring additional police officers. We would like to take this opportunity to advise you all that no individual member of the Village of Cold Spring Police Benevolent Association, except for the members of the Executive Board of the PBA, speaks for or represents the PBA, and that any views or opinions expressed by the individual member is their own and not the PBA's. The PBA feels that there are any issues that need to be addressed, members of the PBA's Executive Board will address them. Please feel free to read this at your next Village Board meeting. Respectfully, Executive Board, Village of Cold Spring PBA, Thomas Ciro, Pat Lizzo, Gary Marino, Ed Wall. There you have two sides. Review proposed correspondence to Main Street merchants regarding signage and merchants display. Falloon, see attached pictures of the sign, merchandise, accessory conditions of Main Street for your reference. They illustrate the conditions experienced on September 7, 2014 and represent the situation on a weekly basis. The applicable sign ordinance will be helpful in controlling this problem. Thank you for your time.
The proliferation of signs is,
What Mary did today was she made a copy of the current sign law, and will distribute that to the merchants. She spoke to Ms. Lenore Burton today to get the list of contacts that she had, and will be handling that. But that does, I know we had visited and revisited the sign law, and what was that for the 28th, or when were we?
Yeah, the 28th is signs, building
Okay.
permit,
So in the interim,
And chapter 40.
in the interim,
building permit.
Oh, sorry, tree advisory, sorry.
in the interim, the signage issue is the notification of the current law that exists is being sent to the merchants, and then next week we will, ask the Bill's request, try to clean up, and make better understanding of what the law is to be able to enforce.
Are we referring, actually, we're not referring them to the existing sign law, are we? Because we're referring them to other aspects of our code, right? Because our sign, we're relying on chapter 64 and chapter 108, I think, right, exclusively? Because
Right.
chapter signs, the number escapes me, is not,
104.
104 sign, it's not,
Enforceable.
not enforceable. Oh. We've
Correct.
already discussed this,
104,
not enforceable.
right, so, that is correct. Did you work with Mary on what you sent
Yeah,
out today?
what it is Mary's quoting a section of law about sidewalk merchandise.
Oh,
And what it does is it talks about signs being removed. Okay, it's just unclear where the sign can be, if it's within the same parameters as merchandise.
okay,
That's where the issue is.
that's the 3,
The 3 feet out for 8 feet by 6 foot high. Right, and the question is, does that apply to signs also? It talks about merchandise, but then it also refers to signs must be removed by the end of the business day and before the day starts.
Mike, did you opine on this letter? Or, and the, is this,
No, I just got this.
oh, okay. So maybe should we ask Mike Ligori to advise us on whether or not signs are referred to in the reference to the
Yeah,
location of
I
merchandise?
don't know, I didn't compile that with Mary. Mary had told me she was doing that.
Okay.
And just so that maybe we can get some kind of control until we get a sign or even
I don't
simply.
think these are in the same vein as political, like the stick in the ground signs. Specifically, I know Peekskill outlawed them completely,
The
the sandwich
the
signs.
sandwich boards.
I mean, while I don't necessarily advocate for getting rid of them across the board, but they just create weaving all over the sidewalk. They blow over in the wind, and so we need something specific to sandwich board signs,
But
I think.
I was asking that question of you, Mike, because you said that there was uncertainty about whether or not the signs, that
Fit within that, yes.
the signs are, they're referred to in 10824B3. And so if we're going to be sending out a letter, we wanna make sure that we're actually being clear.
Yeah, it's got my signature on it.
I mean,
It's a good
Ralph.
idea.
Ralph, I can't believe you
Can you
signed
review
this.
it, because the chapter 64 from the historic district, is 64-5, there's no section B, I don't know
Right,
what
there's
this
only-
is, section B.
Okay.
So, should we,
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'll just read. what
There's
Mary-
actually two sections, I believe Mary was referring to.
Okay.
One was the sections under the historic district, which of course Main Street's totally under, and it's under the national district, not the local district, which makes it even more prohibitive. But there's also a section under our merchandise on the sidewalk law, which cross-reference to signs and it being removed by the end of the business day, and not up before the
I
beginning
guess
of the
3
business
foot,
day.
8 feet, 6 foot sidewalk.
Right, and then I think the problem here is, as you can see from the photographs, because we had talked about this in August and September, some places have one sign, some places have 3 signs, and some of them are leaning, some of them are sandwich boards, so I think what the problem is that I think Mike is really needs to look at it and just give me an idea, maybe we can look it over, because,
I'll, since I signed it, I'll read what it says. I didn't sign it yet. Fall can be one of the pretty seasons in the Hudson Valley. Mary's such a good writer. In the Hudson Valley, and can also be one of the busiest times for our local merchants. We are extremely fortunate that our main street is bustling and so easily accessible to visitors via Metro North vessels docking at our riverfront. Over the years, the village board has worked to ensure that Coastal remains a safe and attractive destination for an increasing number of visitors and has adopted several laws to regulate the use of our public walkways. Since we understand that not everyone may be aware of the regulations in our village code, we want to advise you of certain sections regarding streets and sidewalks, especially as they apply to shops on Main Street. Please review code sections below and assure that you are in compliance. I'm sure that beautifying all of Main Street will help each of our businesses to put a better face. If we all do our part, we can have a lovelier and safer Main Street. Thank you for your cooperation. I think maybe we could entertain a motion to send this out as soon as it gets the proper approvals
Verbiage.
from
yeah.
code enforcement and attorney. This way we don't have to bring it to another meeting.
Okay.
so moved?
Second.
Discussion? Good?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
You have a copy? You have a copy?
I got it.
You have a copy, Bob?
The letter, no, actually, I did.
Old business, nothing, nothing for old business, new business, current IMA, we have a current intermunicipal agreement with the county of Putnam. As, in the past, I talked about the multimodal drainage problem that need to be replaced, that we got a grant for at the intersection of Craigside Drive and, Morris Avenue. We were having problems with the cost versus the grant, and no bidders were willing to bid on the project. The project originally started under Mayor Phillips and did not get picked up under Mayor Gallagher, and we were about to lose the money after I got in, and I had no idea what Mary was talking about with the multimodal. I hadn't seen it in the 2 years prior. So what I had done is I had turned to Mayor Phillips and said, look, I can't start from ground zero. Could you please pick up where you left off? And long story short, he has finally found the right connection. The county is willing to do the project accept the project, accept the grant, do the whole entire project.
Even if the grant is,
Correct, because of the ability of them to purchase with their purchasing power, and because they're paying their salaries and not specific to that. So they can do it for the cost. What they're asking for in return is always a catch.
stick.
What they're asking for in return is if we could plow the American Legion Hall and in front of the Nelsonville Firehouse.
For the rest of our lives?
Well, here's the beauty of the intermunicipal agreement. It is
It's about to expire.
it's an annual agreement.
Okay.
So we have the right to, when we feel that our hands are washed.
So that's interesting, the county plows is responsible for the Nelson?
The Nelsonville Firehouse, because they
Oh,
rent,
it's the county
rents the
substation.
sheriff's substation, and obviously the nutrition center.
Cold Spring Fire Company used to take care of it until we got
Yeah, illegally,
forcibly vacated
by the mayor of Nelsonville. That's a whole nother story for another day.
Do you guys wanna start plowing again?
No. So, again, it's an annual agreement, and the beauty of that is, I think that gives us some leverage in the future. I mean, I know with the bucket truck and the sweeper and so forth and so on. I mean, I think, when we feel that our obligation is equal with the multimodal project, I think we say, look, we'd like to terminate unless, what we're getting this year. So I think it's great. It is, intermunicipal agreement is the way to go these days. That is the big buzzword, the big, what we current have, and you haven't seen this, Mary and I found this today. We have a current one. Oh, well, not really current, it expired,
It's expired?
February of, 2012. So, but we got it so for you to see. And as long as you guys and our attorney feels it is a worthwhile agreement, I would, and again, we don't need to do this right now.
Yeah.
We can have this for next week, or,
About the
again.
week after,
How about the weekend?
next week.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's just,
We'll be here till.
Is that something that's, is there a file, like that you can email, or is it?
Mary can scan and send, yeah.
If we have to do the plowing, I usually should do it while there's some snow, before there's some snow.
The money available was 25 there, so you knew that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the money for that job was estimated around 75.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, good point, I mean.
Just for numbers.
Right, no, that's a fair point.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
Are we allowed to plow outside of our building?
yeah, and that is,
By IMA,
right, you can.
otherwise, no.
We're trying to drive that whole half a mile and.
Yeah.
So,
Do
we
you
will,
need any sort of,
I mean, I think we'll draw it up, and then we'll vote on it when we can see the final draft, if that makes sense. And again, I think it's important to state that, between the bucket truck and the work they did, a $75,000 job that we were only at 25, I mean, they have,
they've been good?
they've been good to us, they have. I mean, I know it's hard to say that the west side doesn't get taken care of by the county, but they've been good to us, so. That's it for old and new business. Oh, look, it doesn't say anything about public comment. But nonetheless, I love, the hands are up. Yes,
Ralph, Board of Trustees. You all said you didn't see or hear the recording of the September 17th meeting, and so I'm going to regale you with some of the very short greatest hits of that meeting, some of the yet unidentified planning board members. Karn Dunn, I'm quoting this, "I think one of the things that I find confusing is that as we were going through the EAF, we were all concerned about the mass and the bulk. And Anna, you kept saying to us, and Chuck kept saying to us, we can talk about reduction when we get to the site plan, so we all sat very nicely, waiting for the site plan, and now here we are." Anna Pellizzeri said, "The whole process, I confess, has troubled me deeply. And it troubles me because I have grave doubts that the community understands the mass of this project, nor even that the village board understands what they have led us to work with, and I think they'll be surprised at the result. James Bergamo, who is hardly an enemy of this project. I have to agree with Arnie. I thought we had more flexibility from the village board. Maybe we should have something drafted to them asking for their opinion on what they did. Arnie, sorry. Anna, my problem is that I've been trying to have this conversation for 6 months or longer, and every time I bring it up, I've been pushed off. This conversation should have taken place 6 months ago when we were doing the environmental review and should have been put to bed then, but it was deferred and kicked down the road like a can. Now, maybe one of the reasons that these board members were so confused about the intentions of the board, and I don't mean to lay this at Catherine Fatty's feet because I think this was widespread belief, but Catherine said, and I'm quoting her now, what's actually going to be built will be decided in site plan. Anything can happen in site plan. If he is given the right guidance from the people on the board, then he will give us what we want. Now, I want to hear from the rest of the board. Michael, you have said that you completely understood, and I believe what you said. Did you know that when you were voting for the B4A, did you think like Catherine that basically, you were voting for the finality of these buildings? Did you know that? That's my big question, because 4 out of 5 of these planning board members were smart people and dedicated to this community did not know that. And then, quite apart from the whole leak of this letter, something smells very wrong here. Anna Georgiou is acting as a political player here. That letter was political. It was scapegoating Stephanie for a road that she led that planning board down. And you cannot tell me, again, with 4 or out of 5 dedicated volunteers, when they are that dumbfounded about what their actual authority is, you cannot convince me that it was Stephanie's fault. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Very much further to that, I can corroborate and expand upon the advice and the direction that the planning board was receiving prior to their vote, their decision on the SEQR review. Why can I do that? Because I was present at several of the meetings, and I was present at a number of meetings when they were poorly, not very well attended, and I distinctly heard numerous times that the planning board members were advised that certain actions would happen after the secret review and the site review phase of the project. And I testified to that, and you should all be aware of that, and there shouldn't have any question in your mind. It is odd, somewhat odd, but I have a suspicion that thus far the planning board members have not directly gone on the record or directly tugged everybody's coat about this malinformation. But in reviewing the letter, the unsigned letter that's been distributed to the newspaper, and seeing what the attorney is stating in this letter, which is privileged and confidential, it's written to the board and the members, but it's here in the public view, so I can read what it says, and I can read the advice of the statements that are being made, addressed to the mayor and the board of trustees. And by the way, parenthetically, I don't enjoy making these statements. I'm not interested in spending my time on this topic any more than anybody else is. But I really can't not inform the public and inform the board that there's been a tremendous amount of manufactured confusion and misinformation on this topic. And for this letter to state what it states is very troubling, because it does not correspond to the information that was verbally given, that I heard at the planning board meetings. Furthermore, the question still has not been resolved in my mind, where in this letter or any other comment in sufficient detail site plan review is somehow precluded by the law, other than a very vague statement that, in the opinion of the attorney, who at this point, quite frankly, is not very credible in terms of the accuracy or the value of the legal advice. But that, in the opinion of the attorney, that there's no, there's no option for site plan review without giving any specific references or detail as to why that conclusion has been made. Furthermore, contradicts what I heard verbally. Lastly, when because it all ties together, when I look at the newspaper, which I read, and the headline says the lawyers are crying foul, and so on. It really appears to me that the lawyers are complaining that the village has a mind of its own. That's the story here. And, the public meeting, open meetings law allows public to attend planning board meetings. Try to wrap it up, but the planning board meetings and the village board meetings, and therefore, we are hearing, and we're entitled to hear what goes on, and we're noting that this is just very convoluted, and it just is not the word you want to use. It's just not right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Matt, Francisco. I think it's good that they're finally getting a voice. I think it is unwise to assume that if people don't bring things to you that they don't exist. I mean, I find in my line of business, part of executive leadership is really to root out the issues because they don't bring them to you. They don't bring them to you for a various number of reasons, and I think Karen's hesitancy to speak tonight should really speak volumes to you as to, I think she asked you to come to her board meeting, and pleased with the strength of these other 4 people to come and hear her. That's what I heard. What strikes me most about this, that they haven't been heard, and that there is this very serious issue that isn't really being discussed, is that you have an admitted attorney that says to maintain the chain of possession, but yet a letter is out there without a signature on it. The only way to produce that letter is to have the electronic copy. So there's a real problem here. In corporate America, this would be a big deal, and I think you guys should really understand that it is as well. It's not just that it's missing a signature. That's not the only difference. There's a much larger issue. What really strikes me is, Trustee Bowman, many times, you were standing where I'm standing now, asking this board to give the residents a voice. You've spent many meetings over the years claiming, that really have centered around issues of ethics and open government, where you perceive wrongdoing. It would seem that you'd have a sincere personal interest in getting to the bottom of this very serious breach of protocol and public trust, especially one where an attorney-client privilege letter is leaked to the PCNR that supports their ongoing narrative in their reporting of Butterfield, as well as their attacks on anyone who offers anything but a full-throated, unconditional support of that project. What concerns me the most is, we elect a mayor. The mayor says, I want to keep this confidential, and the next day it's in the paper. My concern is really, the act of the PCNR publishing this letter is directly counter to the stated will of our elected officials that we entrust to run this place, regardless of whether or not we voted for you, right? You're who we have to work with. We look to you. it would seem, Michael, that you would have the greatest concern, because, you know, the perception could be that you yourself leaked it. You were the most vocal about it needing to get out, you wanted it to get out, you said it supported all the story, it supported the narrative, right? And it does support your narrative, much in your comments and your written comments, it supports the PCNR narrative. But it doesn't tell the story of what the board members are asking to be heard. They're asking to be given a voice as to why they were led down this road, right? They arrived at a neg deck because they were told that they could address mass and scale later. Frank and I were at many of these meetings. I have audio recordings of all but one. You're welcome to them, right? If your only sticking point is mass and scale, then that's how you get to a negative deck. It may not have been intentional, but it clearly was bad information. So again, just to wrap this up, you know, Michael, as you repeatedly requested in the past for what I think are much less serious issues, I ask that you, the mayor, and your fellow trustees convene an ethics board to determine the source and intention of this leak. Further, to give voice to the planning board members that have raised serious secret process issues directly related to their special counsel, Anna Georgiou, only to be diminished in her letter as yet to be identified. This is, in my opinion, a watershed moment that calls for demonstrated leadership to restore the public trust that the village is, in fact, run by our duly elected officials, the mayor, the board of trustees, and not unduly influenced by appointed officials, the PCNR, and those outside of our community that enjoy relationships with them. To fail to act on this with an ethics board would be, for me, to see you abandon your very publicly stated principles on ethics in government. I encourage you to demonstrate leadership now to resolve this issue to the satisfaction of these planning board members and the greater village residents.
I agree 100% that in accordance with the village code, there does need to be a standing board of ethics, and I've said that for 5 or 6 years, as I've been in that audience in the same spot. And I was told then that it would happen, and it never did, and...
No, our code reads to convene it when you need it. You have the power to set it up.
As far as I knew.
No, actually it's not. But Mike, obviously I'm not on the board anymore, Mike.
Either or. There's many issues that could be vetted through the.
So take the ball and
standing
run with it,
ethics.
Yeah, then change the code. I mean, you can change the code every
It's
single
not
meeting.
a discussion we haven't had since I've been on the board.
Yes,
Can I just make a comment?
please do.
You know, I think the board, planning board, and the zoning board have done a very good job. And I think we need to be very careful throwing around accusations and allegations. I think the attorneys at hand were asked to summarize their thoughts in regards to the planning board questions and answers, and they did that. They put a document together and they surmised it. Also, as far as the letter becoming public, I was sitting here and I think Trustee Hawkins brought the letter forth. Therefore, I don't, as far as it being confidential, it is no longer confidential because it was brought forth in the public. And to talk about politically motivated by the PCNR, this needs to be investigated. We need to be very careful attacking people's personal character. And I've worked in the special board. I've been in this village for quite some time, and I've dealt with Butterfield. I've been beat over the head about Butterfield, and this is this ongoing process. And we need to be very careful when we attack a person's character.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Catherine,
you know what, the discussion is, I said we need to be very careful, and in my opinion, you have attacked Catherine Fatty, you have attacked many people, and Frank, I sent you a link to the planning board's document that says at the very paragraph that we are very clear on, because you made that comment in phillipstown.info, and I sent you that link, I sent you many other links that talks about all the documents, numerous documents over the years of how they got to this decision.
Okay, anybody else?
Just to be clear, this is my copy of the memo from Herbert and Kelly, and it was highlighted last meeting. I'm sure the camera picked it up, and it is signed, so I absolutely unequivocally did not release this to anybody.
Anybody else?
That copy, sir.
Yes?
Okay. Bill Bajarski wrote the letter in regard to the police department. I wear many hats in this village. Just to clarify, I did not speak on behalf of the PBA. Okay, I had very specifically asked the PBA to take up this matter over a week ago, and their action was inaction. They did not respond. They did not even address it, except I've gotten a lot of dirty stares. What I've done is that I've put into writing what I feel is the truth, and I brought it before this board since nobody felt like they wanted to take that time to bring it out. If they opt not to respond, that was their decision, and I didn't ask their permission, and I hoped that they wouldn't ask mine to present a letter. They didn't ask me about the letter they presented. So I stand on that letter, be happy to expound upon it. I did go to them and ask them to act on behalf of the PBA and its members. The executive board opted not to act on its members and its behalf. Okay, and that's why there was a letter presented to this board this evening.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir?
My name is Mike Mirapool. I have not really followed this issue until coming to this meeting today. I read a piece in phillipstown.info and that was about it. So I haven't read the letter, but I'm asking a kind of a rhetorical question. From listening to what I've heard tonight and from hearing a little bit about the letter, it sounds to me, and maybe I'm totally wrong, that the approval of the B4A basically, in effect, said, yes, in principle we approve Butterfield, and the developer now has a blank check because the planning board has no control over what they do. Now, if that's true, that's pretty damn serious, and as a taxpayer, I'm a little concerned about that. So I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I kind of am asking a rhetorical question of the village board is, given that the planning board's hands are now tied, what kind of constraints are there on the developer?
Anybody else?
Yeah, I watched the video today from the last planning board meeting, and I hope you all do at some point, or listen to the audio, because it speaks, the picture speaks 1,000 words, and this definitely will. My main concern, well, there were many concerns. It's pretty disturbing video if you watch it, with an open mind. But the main part is that Mr. Malloy and two of the trustees that are now on the board spoke during their campaigns extensively about OML. And there is total blatant disregard for OML by the chairperson at this meeting. First of all, at one point the board was asked, after a lot of discussion, and there was confusion by everyone, I mean, it's just totally plain to see that, and it was discussed whether a memo should be written to the village board asking them what their intent was on their decision, because that was the crux of the problem for them. During that whole melee, kind of back and forth or whatever, it was then brought by the chairperson to the attorney whether it would be appropriate to go into an advice council with her at that point, while she was trying to craft a memo to you, the village board. And during this discussion, no one seemed to have a problem with this. There was no vote taken. There was no motions passed. There was a statement that the meeting was closed, but then it was reopened after a member of Mr. Galaro, a representative, asked, what the decision would be, and then they reopened it. They went into an executive session pretty much without any executive session motion. And this was a discussion that was being had in public for at least a half an hour or more that now had to be confidential in the chairperson's, that was his thoughts about it. So they went into an executive session without a motion, without a vote, and then came out of it, and they had a total different opinion on the vote was then changed to 4-1 in favor. So if you're just reading this or don't see the video or whatever, you don't get this information, and the public's not going to get this information. But the fact is that OML law was broken. There was total disregard for it by the chairperson. This went into an executive session for no reason at all, because everything else was being discussed with the council right there, and it was at a point where it was going to a memo when it was a 4-1 vote against. So, or for sending a memo. So, I think you should really take a look at that. I hope you will. And I think, Ralph, as the leader of the board, I think that you're not just one person. You are the mayor. You have leadership. That's what you're qualified for. And that's what you were voted into your position for, to be the leader of this. And I think it's very important to look at this, to look at how this meeting was run. And I think also, going back to the letter that's unsigned, I don't think we can just blow that off. I mean, because, I mean, how else can it get into the hands of the PCNR without, you know, not being signed, if it didn't come from the attorneys? I mean, how else does that happen? Did someone get it and, you know, there's no evidence that it was the signature was taken off of there. So, and if that's an allegation or whatever, so be it. But I think you have to take that into consideration. And in taking that into consideration, I think that you should realize that you have attorneys that may not be acting in the best interest of the village, that they may be acting in the best interest of themselves or whoever. But it doesn't seem like they were acting in the best interest of the village. Thank you.
And we all have a lot of opinions here. We can look at the video, we can read the letters, we can do whatever we want to. The fact of the matter remains that 4 people voted in favor of this document, of this whole process. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm unclear or I think something's not going on, I'm voting no on it. I'm not gonna sit there and vote for something regardless of them telling me that it's gonna be later down the road. Well, I can vote later down the road. The fact of the matter remains that 4 people voted in favor of this. And again, we go back to these allegations about lawyers. Lawyers take their creed seriously. Now, there were other people CC'd on that document. Hey, possibility it could be done there. But the fact of the matter remains, the fact is that 4 people voted in favor of this.
Hi, James Hartford, local architect. I've done a lot of work in various business districts in the village, and every single one of those applications, by and large, has gone to planning board review. And it took me 8 months to get my office sign approved. You know, so there is definitely a precedent for reviewing mass and scale. You know, I can give you numerous examples, including my work on the PCNR building, the Hudson River expeditions, you know, where the planning board was very much involved in mass and scale of that. And I found it shocking that mass and scale is off the table now for discussion for such a large and important project. Thanks.
Anybody else?
I just want to say,
Yes, sir.
Phil Heffernan, that I completely concur with James Hartford. There is no possible way the biggest development that has ever occurred in this village can go to the planning board and not have scale and mass considered at this point. And I am terribly worried that the scale of this may swamp our water district, may swamp our traffic patterns, may completely obliterate life as we know it on Chestnut Street. And to have some sort of mysterious appearance that, oh, you didn't read the fine print? You didn't read the fine print? No, by giving us this zoning change, we abandon all ability to weigh in on what a developer can do here. Is just, you gotta look into this, Rob.
This has been going on for many years.
You know what, we know that.
This has
That's
been
fine.
going on-
We
I
don't-
don't need you to yell in my ear,
It's fine.
okay?
Okay.
This has
It's
been
fine.
going
I'd
on
like
for
to,
many years. They've done, they've talked to the water department, they've
I know.
talked to many people, and, it's out there. It's out there.
But Catherine, they're obviously
It's
misinformed.
out there.
Guys,
No, they're
please,
not
please, please,
misinformed.
please.
You're misinformed, and you're trying to
Catherine,
speak on
Catherine,
behalf
will
of
you-
others.
Come on,
Please.
please. Yep.
Rob, colleagues, in response to requests that we form a board of ethics, I'd like to make a motion that we do so under Chapter 9, Section 6 of our code. Appoint a board of ethics. This will answer Trustee Bowman's previous requests to do so, and it will give the public a destination for their concerns that they think fall under Chapter 9.
Your motion was?
Seconded.
My motion was seconded.
No, what was I? Just want clarification. How can I distrust you? What was it? The motion was?
Motion to create, or establish a board of
Okay.
ethics under Chapter 9 of the Village Code.
Second, discussion?
It's a long, long time coming.
I don't think it's a good idea. Any other discussion?
Ralph, I'll arm wrestle you for it.
Good idea.
I'm as bad as I lose. All those in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye.
So, we
I think
can,
there's-
let's work with, maybe, do you wanna work with, Mike Labori?
Yeah, I think it's pretty well spelled out in our code what the makeup and composition of the Board of Ethics is.
We should
We should discuss.
authorize the clerk to advertise.
Okay.
Authorize and director to advertise for positions on the board, and then, however soon, you guys feel it appropriate to.
I mean, how does that work though? Do we interview the people who are gonna be judging us?
Come on, really?
I mean,
How's that gonna go?
I thought we could appeal to the Board of Ethics at the highest level, like the higher level.
We can
At one point,
appeal to the board of ethics at the county.
You could use the county.
at one point I had written a letter to them.
Let me tell you,
Former mayor.
Yeah.
in my firm's representation of the town of Patterson, the town board felt the same way, and essentially was rejected by the county on that aspect. They said that, there were issues of local nature, and it wasn't gonna be the
Did
sounding
they create
board.
one? Did they create their own?
And so did Patterson then create their own board of ethics?
Well, they had one that was, they had all the, ultimately, I don't think they did.
Did they want, do one for us, we'll do one for them? Seriously, how unbiased? They're gotta be completely, they have no idea.
That has been done where two municipalities kind of switch.
If you wanna ask them.
Well, I mean, if they're looking for something, we need something. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel. I mean, there's no way, I don't know anybody that lives there. I mean, again, I mean, it's just completely foolish to believe that we won't be accused of creating our own unethical ethics board. It's just completely out there.
Hold on, I'll read you this section. There is hereby established a board of ethics. You have a board of ethics, it's just not appointed.
That's
That's
exactly
it.
what I've been
To
saying.
consist of at least 3 members who shall be appointed by the village board, all of whom shall reside in the village of Cold Spring, and who shall serve without compensation.
And it's a standing board, at least it's supposed to be.
Right.
Well, I mean, I know in other communities,
Right now it's a floating board.
in other communities, they use clergy, but,
Yeah.
God forbid, somebody from their parish, what are they gonna do? I mean, it's
But
just- it's
I
just not gonna
spent
work.
literally years in that audience, reading that over and over and over and over again.
And don't you feel vindicated this
I
evening?
really do.
Good. So,
What have you been doing the last
so the opinion of the ethics board is advisory.
I've been being told
and
I'm wrong
and
over
fun.
and over and over again.
Yes.
Can I just, would it make sense to have chairs of different boards in the village interview for this?
We're getting to the root of why there's never been one.
You know what, to
Nobody
be,
can figure out how to do
I
it.
think we're better off creating new legislation and completely,
However, everyone's term is only 2 years. I mean, there's a board of ethics and the populace that elects people on the board.
I think the Putnam County Board of Ethics was chaired by Bob Dickman.
well, look, they
Bickford.
Yeah.
they need their, driveway plow.
I'm just telling you what our experience was, was that the county was not particularly interested, that board of ethics in.
Did they say why?
I don't remember. I'll ask my partners.
And I wrote a letter to
Just-
appeal to Mr. Bickford 3 years ago about an issue we were having.
Bob
and he
Bickford's great.
also said he didn't have any interest
Does
in
the
getting
code
involved.
define criteria for membership?
Well,
Beyond,
it
beyond
says that-
membership? I mean, beyond residency?
Because it has to be at least one member who is an elected or appointed village officer or employee. Mary?
Mary should chair.
I nominate
She's
you.
absolutely,
Judge Costello.
Judge Costello,
That's why she
I
should
mean,
chair.
there's, but again, I just, if he says yes,
And so
Yes.
Ralph, what are your reservations?
I mean, sitting here, there's absolutely no way that someone's not gonna say, well, you appointed that person because of, whatever the case is. And for example, I mean, probably the most honest people, clergy, well, if one of his parishioners happens to be the one that's being investigated, that's a bad situation for, so, I mean, I don't think there's really anybody that's going to be fair and unbiased or perceived as fair and unbiased if we pick them.
It says that, the Board of Ethics can create its own rules and procedures, and, so should we, Mike, can we encourage the rules and procedures to include questions of, conflicts of interest or?
Well, you set forth the code, section 9.4 sets forth the standards of conduct that would be the jurisdiction of the Board of Ethics.
And that's
Again,
where it gets very interesting in the 1 square mile village.
It
in
is.
terms
You
of-
just know everybody or something about everybody. That is just natural fact. I honestly, there's no. I mean, because this is obviously I sat in these seats when it was being brought up 2 and 3 years ago, and no matter which way you looked, it was the answers always came from you got to go outside. And
Actually, I remember your response to me perfectly was, if I have an issue with ethics, come back with my attorney.
right, because fair and unbiased. You weren't. I mean, because this started because there was a certain mayor that was needed to be ousted for ethical violations, and there was no way to prove it. There was no way to try it. There was nothing you could do about it. And again, it comes down to that. It's I'm one vote. My personal opinion is you're not going to find an unbiased Board of Ethics in this village, at least in perception. There are completely unbiased people. God forbid that unbiased person has his neighbor that is being investigated and actually likes their neighbor. There's no way that there's not at least the realm of thinking, hey, it's your guy's neighbor.
Well, the neighbor would be,
It's a bad situation to put that person in, and I'm not saying he wouldn't be unbiased.
Right.
But if the side calling for the ethics violation finds out that the neighbor cleared said person, and you don't like that he was cleared, your natural human response is going to be, well, of course not, it's his neighbor. So I just, for me, I'm voting outsiders. Doesn't know anything about anything, and they just take the whole project for face value. Not for, because, and I'll give you an example. Now this ethics violation thing, it has split, the Butterfield thing in itself has split the village in half. So, 2 come from one side and 1 comes from the other. You don't know that they're not going to be, I just don't trust that they're going to be unbiased. Listen, we're not trusted, and we all believe we're trustworthy. That's the human nature of politics and politicians. Yes?
One of the things that I've noticed on the board of directors of the Hudson Valley Land Trust is that whenever there's a conservation easement being discussed, they actually have a recusal process in place so that any neighboring landowners would get up and leave the room, and they're not a part of the discussion, they're not a part of the vote, so they're not biasing the process. So I think it would probably be wise to have more than 3, and at least 2 that are on standby or something like that, so that there's always somebody that you can kind of vet a thing. Yes, it's not going to be perfect, but it'll be a lot better. If you only have 3, that's not enough, right? And you have to have a very clear recusal process, which is something that I think the village in general needs to improve on. There's certainly mechanisms to do it.
I mean, that's fine. I completely honest with you. Especially if the mayor, if it's the mayor that's being investigated, half of you voted for him and the other half didn't, or whatever the numbers are. I really find it hard. I mean, look.
Isn't that the nature of politics, though?
That's why, to be honest with you, I say you go outside that nobody knows about the politics. I mean, I don't know who doesn't know about the politics of the village of Cold Spring, but that's a whole nother story. But seriously, I mean, I want to be judged by people that I've never wronged. And I've been here 45 years. As good as I am, there's people out there that don't like me, believe it or not. And I don't know. I mean, there's people that don't like me that I don't know that they don't like me. If they accidentally end up on this and they don't want to admit it, and it's like, I remember what happened.
Sandy, how far away is he going to have to go here?
It's, and again, I'm not opposed. I think the village people should do the work of the village people. I just think when it comes to ethics, there is absolutely no way that people don't have an open mind in the village because they know somebody who told them something about the case. It's like the jury pool. when you take a jury pool, there's people that just can't be on a jury. And when you take this little half a square mile village, there's nobody that wasn't affected by a decision by one of us, good and or bad. And I don't care what it is, and if we vote to say within, it's good for the people. I don't trust either side of the ethics because, Butterfield has just, completely shown the wide range of effects of what it does to people, and people that don't speak out, you don't know that they're not gonna, I'm neutral, I'm unbiased, you don't know that, maybe I can't believe that they voted yes for that, and haven't come to a meeting and said that. Well, here's your opportunity to say, I'm gonna get one for the one side or the other. I honestly don't believe in a village as small. We all know something about everybody. It just doesn't make sense to me, but,
But it's really about a discussion about something being unethical, right? I mean, it may be a vote
which is
that
a
we
matter of
might like.
opinion in most cases.
Well, but the chapter, I mean, there are limited items that, that chapter addresses. It's, and.
Sure.
And it's also, it's an advisory board, and it's, and it's supposed to be.
I advised the
and it's supposed
mayor,
to
the mayor says no, it's over.
It's supposed to be confidential.
We went down this rabbit hole the last, few months of the mayorship, and there was some of the very intelligent people that are very good problem solvers couldn't solve this problem.
We didn't have a board of ethics.
It was far beyond the last few months.
Yes.
I think it's sort of sad in a way that, I understand what you're saying. This is a decent-sized village, and there are a lot of very ethical people who live here.
Correct.
And I think there are plenty of people. I think there are plenty of people who can separate the person from the act, and do it properly. I think you're not giving us a chance.
I think that's fair. I think that's
you
fair.
need to.
And, you know what? I'm not the. You're right. You know what? Good point. I hate my mom. You know what? And you're right. I think it's. Unfortunately, I've just seen. I've seen the dirtiness in the last 4 years, and
it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse.
Getting back to the original start of this conversation, can you give us some examples of how these are formed? Because I agree with you. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be interviewing the people who are going to be judging us.
This is the way.
But that's what.
If it's the way, then it's the way.
Right. If it's the way, then it's the way. And you know what, Kathy?
And look, there's nothing to say you can't. I'm sorry, Kathleen. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
There's nothing to say you can't change it. Just for right now, this is your way. Okay.
Well, go ahead.
I'm just throwing out an idea. There seems to be an extreme level of discomfort about this idea, which I can understand. I think arguments can be made both ways for setting it up and not setting it up. Is an alternative to simply calm down and actually look at the questions that the public have raised this evening? Like, actually look at them, actually have an open session and debate the questions that were raised tonight, rather than going through this contortion of setting up an ethics committee, actually address the questions.
No, right, and I think that's fine. And there's two parts. I'll give you a two-part answer. Number one, I think we need this anyway. So, if we can work through this.
An ethics committee?
Yeah, I think we need it anyway to know that we have one.
That's
because.
Not the impression I'm getting from you.
No, I think we should. I absolutely think we should have one. I don't trust that it's unbiased in our little village because we just are too close to each other. But I think we absolutely 100% should have one. And I think Fran's last statement is I think you're right. We need to. That's what it says. That's what we should do. We should give each other a chance. And to your second point, I have always said yes to that.
Yes, to what? To what?
Having open sessions and discussions. I don't believe the fierceness of Butterfield will allow this to happen. Because at the end of the day, it'll still be.
I think you've got some facts in front of you, right? You've got one, and I don't have any skin in this game. You make the decision you're going to make, but you have some person saying you have an attorney saying there's no problem here. You have another member of the public reading out very specific quotes from the members of that board that seem to indicate there's a problem. So bring them here and ask them a question in front of everyone who is raising the questions. This doesn't seem as painful as it's becoming, you've had a question raised about a process, you haven't, I don't know what you do on the sidewalk, I don't know if you've had conversations with these folks, but it seems like the questions that have been raised here tonight are valid to bring before the public and discuss in an open forum. What is it that your board understood? There's a question, let's understand what's happening here. That as opposed to setting up an ethics committee. I'm not understanding why you're going in that direction rather than answering the questions.
Yeah, well, I think the ethics committee is tied to the leak.
Well, the leak seems, my opinion that matters not at all is that the leak in comparison to the larger questions that are being raised is pretty minor. You know, you got a CC list, it's a pretty short list, and I can think of, you know, you can think of how there are lots of versions for how that could have got, actually there are not that many versions for how it was leaked, but it really doesn't matter. What matters more is the substance of the letter and the substance of the comments that were made this evening. And we are, I think, I think, respectfully, are minimizing the actual matters of concern that were raised, and you're focusing on minutia. You're focusing on something that's not as important as the substance.
But again, the minutia was clearly stated to us that it's not minutia in the leak, and I tend to agree with that statement because I don't care. The fact that it's leak isn't a big deal, except it's a betrayal. Shouldn't have been done, which leads to a bigger, well, why? Was there a bigger motivation?
Larger story.
Are you going to do this again?
Yes, yes.
You know, so it is an ethical issue. You know, and
but there's a comma. There's a comma. That is an ethical issue, comma, and.
So we're doing the ethics.
Here are the issues that are raised by that leak.
And what it always comes back to, like it or not, is the the misleading, the misunderstanding gets pitted against anti-Butterfield. That's what this village does, and that's not the truth, but that's what it gets tied to, and you all know that.
Let me clarify the reason I'm making these statements tonight. Again, I have no skin in the decision that the planning board's making.
Sure.
I'm saying to you, I see a process concern. As a board member from a different board, if there were that level of misunderstanding among my board, I would hope that there would be an and there was an apparent effort. It's clear that there was an effort on the part of those board members to reach out for clarification and understanding. They're not sitting here. Why, I can't tell you. Why that person who was so clear on September 17th was unwilling to speak to you this evening, I can't answer that question.
Sure.
But if I were a member of a board that was clearly struggling, remember when the HDRB struggled, when we were struggling over legal issues, and we did not have confidence in the advice of our attorney, we lost confidence in the advice of our attorney, we turned to the Board of Trustees. Some of you were sitting at the table, some of you weren't. But we turned to the trustees for clarification and for guidance. And what happened?
Right.
What happened was that we sat in a workshop, my board, that board, and in public, we had a discussion about the issues, resolved them, and moved forward. What I see happening tonight, which I find befuddling, is, I don't know, nobody's saying anything. It happened, it's clear. It's clear that the questions were raised, so pursue them.
And again, this is, not to protect myself, but, Matt made a good point about, I have to go search these things out, right? That was, what you're alluding to. I have to search these things out.
I also want to be clear too. I was speaking really fast. It's been a very long day. I did not mean to imply at all that I think you leaked the letter. What I thought I said was that you would want to clear your name. Actually, for what it's worth, I don't think it was you. Right? It doesn't really matter what I think.
But to his, unfortunately in this position, it's all me. It's all on me, and I get that. But to your point, to counter Matt's is. The mayor didn't come to you and say, "Oh, I see you have a problem,"
No, the mayor was the problem.
Exactly. And you came and seek the help and got it. Now, the planning board doesn't seem to. Again, I'm not speaking for them, and I'm not saying that I shouldn't be after them. But at the same time, look, you have to realize. These people need to come forward. I'm not running, searching at the people, and when she, when
She's
she,
the liaison, ask
she
her.
as a liaison, and she did, and then when she brought it to the attention, I didn't let it go away. We had we launched the investigation, which brought it to this leakage, yada, yada, yada. So, it's not that I don't care what they're doing. It's, I didn't realize, because they didn't come to me, and when the liaison brought it to our attention, it didn't go under the carpet. We said we would get to the bottom of this. And even, the last couple of days, Trustee Hawkins asked them this, asked them that, asked them this, and so it's not that I am sweeping anything under the carpet, but there is two sides to every player in every story, and with 4 to 5, I can't believe that they didn't, 4 of them together didn't say, we gotta do something about this, and now maybe they're scared.
They did, and then they got pulled into an executive session, and suddenly they all came out saying like, no, we're not gonna.
It's on tape.
It's on the tape, dude.
Listen, I know I'm not disagreeing with what happened. I'm disagreeing with the activity of those 4 that coming out of executive that got scared into something.
It bears discussion.
It is, and we're discussing it.
The thing is, Ralph, one thing I have to clarify, because you are painting this Butterfield discussion as for against.
Well, what is it?
It is not.
No, it's not.
It is not. I am so in favor of the Butterfield development, you have no idea. My only concern is it is appropriate in scale, and I just really have to remind everybody at what a tremendous outcome, positive outcome, after I believe it was 3 years of bitter fighting over the lumberyard.
Sure.
And what that involved was a massaging of the site and density, civilly, with consideration of what do you need to make on this versus how dense do we really need it, what can we accommodate in this tiny little place. So when we speak about Butterfield, I think we really have to be generous to each other and know we're all
we do
for it.
Do.
It's just really this fine tuning that worked so well. In our waterfront.
And you're right, but you have to remember, because time heals all wounds. At the end of that process, there were some very, very bitter people that didn't believe that the village got the best deal.
Well,
you're always going to get that.
Everyone has
But you
opinions.
have to realize, from our point of view, is that when do we know when those that are not in favor of it are when it's okay, or when there are certain people that just completely believe.
It was the planning board that worked so well with the developer in that particular case. So I thought the planning board did a phenomenal job in quid pro quo, a back and forth. The historic review board also was very, very important in defining something that we were all so pleased with. And I would have to say, all right, rancor right after the event aside, 2-3 years down the line, we all look at what a fantastic development that turned out to be. And it started out way too big, way too dense, and way too ugly. And that's my only concern here, is that somehow we don't get to, and Galero was a part of that. He knows how it goes. This doesn't seem like it should stand. We should do exactly what we did with the lumberyard. Exactly. That is, have a process of negotiation back and forth amongst various boards and the developer. And as you pointed out when you were running for office, you had indicated that we need to trust. But trust is a two-way street. So the developer needs to come to us and also trust our boards that we're not trying to disembowel this project, because we're not, and that's why I object to the black and white on the whole thing. No, smart government works with people that are bringing money and revenues and services to the community. So I just think our planning board shouldn't be left high and dry on this, that there has to be not a gotcha, which is kind of the feeling, I got this bad feeling in the back of my mind that there was a gotcha here, and that's not fair, and that's not going to promote trust. So that's, and coming up with an ethics committee, it strikes me as it's going to do about as much good as it does in Washington. It's a political thing, and it's filled with gotchas. I'm not a big fan of it myself. I mean, ethics is basically observed, judged on by individuals, and you cast your ballot next March or next November, depending on how we run our elections. So that's just my 2 cents. I hate to see this train just kind of rush out of the station, and then, I mean, how is anybody, what, are we gonna have subpoenas? You know, we're gonna call members of the board to testify who knew what when? You know, I just.
I think if you went back to the last few months of the previous mayor, yeah, you would have been
Yeah,
going
but
down that road.
this is not, that was a bit of an anomaly, to be honest with you.
Oh, thank you.
No, really. Most of the time, everybody behaves in a perfectly reasonable manner from a political viewpoint. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we got opinions, but you know, I would never serve on such a board to try and figure out, was Bruce the one that slipped it under someone's doorstep and say, I didn't see it? Maybe you'd like, you know, I mean, it's like, come on. I don't get it. The fact is, somebody leaked it. 4 people could have done it.
No.
5,
There were
10,
14.
exactly. What, you know, we're not the FBI here.
Right, it gets worse. How many?
It gets worse. 20 people could have done it.
I just want to reinforce what Phil said about what a disservice it is to paint the issue as black and white for or against. I think there's a huge amount of support all across the village to getting it right, right? And I think the assumption has been that from one side that just let the developer do it, he'll do a great job. And that's one viewpoint. And there are others that are less trusting of that process. And that side wants to see more planning board review, right? That's what it comes down to. But, you know, I think it's a really bad precedent to set that the planning board does not have the opportunity to review this, because we've got other pieces of property in the village as well, right? Look how much review the West Point Boundary Preserve went through, right? That was a lot for a park, right?
Mm.
Good job.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to, I agree totally that the project has been painted as people against and for, and that isn't true. And that's propagated and continued in the papers, particularly the PCNR. Hi guys. And it's obvious, like when people like Stephanie is attacked like the way she is with headlines, the way they are, and that's what's forming the divide in the town. It isn't this project. People do want to have the project. They want to see it vetted properly. And if it takes 3 or 4 years when we're going to live with it for the rest of our lives, then I think that it's well worth 3 or 4 years. You know, unfortunately, Mr. Galaro would have to hang on that long, but I think he's in it for, you know, for the long run. So, you know, I think to keep saying there's people for and against it is part of the problem. The people, all the people that I know are for it, and my objection to it from the start has been the scale of it, and that people don't really understand. I'm in the business of building, and people that are architects or whatever, they have an idea of what they're looking at blueprints and what it's going to look like or feel like, and I don't think that can be said about everyone. And the scale is the problem with this. And when you're walking there, or when you're in the village, and there's 3 or 4 whatever stories these buildings are now, is what you're going to see, and it's going to be right against the road, and it's going to be compact. And I think this is important. It's not against the project, it's having the project done properly. So really, I think we have to forget about this for and against, because I don't see it there. I mean, obviously there's people that are against it and want it to be a field for walking dogs, I don't know, but you know, there's other people that are more realistic, that understand that a developer has rights, and there should be a negotiation, and he understands that, and it's a back and forth. So I agree with 2 people that spoke before me that this isn't, you know, black and white, and it isn't for and against. That's been continued, and that divide's continued weekly by the PCNR.
Again, I think the boards have done a great job, and of course, nothing is black and white, but the fact of the matter, this has been going on for years, and this is gonna go on as long as we let it. It's 10:30 right now, we can let it go on and on and on. PCNR is not to blame for this. We have opinions in the community, we have opinions everywhere, and once again, I would just have to say, I would not vote for something that I had questions about. And once again, you can be for something and still against it. So I think the boards have done a great job. And as far as opening up to the public, I think it's all been open, it's all been transparent. Everybody's had input, and we're still having input. And again, this is gonna go on and on and on. And we just need to be respectful of people's opinions, and we need to stop attacking the PCNR, we need to stop attacking the board members, and we need to get to work on this and move forward with it.
Thank you. Frank?
Yeah, I mean, the ethics thing you're talking about, I don't know much about it. It sounds like you're discussing it, you're seriously considering it, and so, to be honest with you, I guess, you're considering maybe you shouldn't do it because it would be imperfect. I think to go back and not have an ethics board, like there's been discussed, and there's, you know, kind of a groundswell of interest, even though it will be imperfect, and even though it will be dismissed by one or other category of the electorate and or the resident. I think that you have to do the best thing there, which is to accept the imperfection and go forward with that, I think.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment on people's opinion. People all have opinions, but people don't have platforms like some of the newspapers do. And when newspapers print things that are slanted one way or other, then that's more than just a personal opinion that we might disagree or agree with. The PCNR, for instance, has been in business how many years? 145 and counting, or whatever it is. For many years, people respected and trusted in that, and it's now new owners, and it's got a different side to it, which is fine. I mean, that's papers, whatever, but you have to realize that people are still reading that as if it was the paper from before, and that's not the case. And so they have total right to write whatever they want and to fabricate whatever they want, or to write headlines as outstanding as they are about issues that really didn't happen, and that's fine. But it's definitely influencing people, that aren't aware, or influencing people's opinions.
And that's your opinion, your platform.
I think that also just quickly, people just yelling and talking back and forth. I think you should just put a leash on that, please. We don't accept that in any other of the forums that I'm in, and as when I was on the board or as the town, of people getting back and forth in conversations. It's directed at the board.
Exactly, and mine is directed at the board. You have your own opinion and your own platform.
Nobody's even recognized you.
So, further to the motion and the discussion, I'm wondering if we want to, if the village board would like to discuss, before, taking action, we'd like to discuss, maybe ask Bob Bickford, who was on the Putnam County Board of Ethics, to come and talk to us about how that works and what that, do you feel like that would be
I've spoken
useful?
to him in the past.
So why don't you rescind your second?
He probably has more.
Okay, you guys want to rescind the motion in a second and do our.
I think the motion was already voted on.
No, we didn't vote, we were in discussion.
Right, we're still in discussion.
Yeah, but, I'm just asking, do you prefer to go through it and decide, take action to form it, or do you want to do some reconnaissance and?
I think it's in our best interest to get the best deal to understand before we vote on it.
The best,
Yeah,
the best deal in information.
The best deal of information and what we final word.
Michael, do you wanna withdraw your second? Or-
Sure.
Okay, and I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Do
We
we
talked
have,
to Bob Bickford?
do you wanna follow up with Bob? I can do
I
that,
mean,
I'm friendly with him.
Yeah, if you can follow up with him, I've just corresponded via email with him. And
Okay,
it's been a few years.
when did you last have that, like last year, or?
Whenever Seth was fighting with the fire department.
Oh, well.
I'll have to go back and do
Isn't that
my
nice?
notes.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'll follow up with Bob.
Thank you for your patience, your input.
Do we, do we want to ask the planning board to come and chat with us? And so we can talk to the individual members in the meeting the way we had discussed last week? I do agree that, people here have asked for us to follow up on that, and I appreciated what Kathleen said about, kind of coming down from the house and having a discussion about it instead of, jumping to conclusions and then shrugging it off.
Again, my biggest concern is that agenda is gonna pack the room, and you're going to put the planning board members under, don't know what they're gonna be willing to say when all the eyes are on them. You know, I'm not opposed to it. You know, I'm a big proponent of.
Nothing prevents you from talking to the members of the planning board as mayor.
Are you for, are any of you interested in hearing from them? I mean,
I'm interested in
and-
hearing. I said that, I asked that from the beginning, what happened to our meeting, when we got some of this spoke about earlier. But again, I understand what Ralph just brought up too, but that's something that you maybe talk.
You know, you guys, we sit up here and people pack the room sometimes, and that goes with.
Yeah, we're elected. They're
Well,
appointed.
they put their names in, and this is.
They did, but.
I think it's pretty important that we do try to arrange some, we're never gonna be back and forth. Everything that was brought up tonight,
I would
think
like
deserves
us to have, well, I would like to feel resolved about the question, and I feel like there are people here who would also like to feel resolved and understand how these questions can be answered, you know, so.
Can you have a conversation with them and?
Are you talking?
Sorry, can you have a conversation with one or two or all, I mean, and see if they're, if they're in fact uncomfortable in the spotlight, invite them and see what happens.
I will speak to each one of them.
One of the things about this, Ralph, and the reason I think it would be valuable to have an exchange is because, as I pointed out to Karn, when she said, well, come to the meeting and ask me, the meetings of the planning boards are not meetings where the chair is feeling hospitable to questions. Barney is not interested in questions. He will, I think that Matt has, even as the liaison, would ask questions and be rebuffed and told, no, only comments. And, you know, I was there last week and I heard him address people, and, but then the irony of it was that somebody did get to have a Q&A exchange, and there was a conversation. But the kind of exchange that we enjoy here with the public, when people, one of the things that I love about the way you run a meeting is it could be 10:40, and James Hartford might jump up in the back and say, wait, I have something else I need to say, and you will accommodate that. And I think that, hey, I think
Can I just comment on that? Here's the ironic thing about the village. Just as many people can't stand the fact that I don't shut people up. Could you imagine that? Half the people think that they should be able to say what they want, and the other half to think that you gotta shut them up. You can't just let them go on and on. So, you know, it's irrelevant.
There are people.
It's good to be me. Trust me. No, there's value to this, and you know what?
You know where I stand, since I had a police officer called here to shut me up one night, and they instituted a 5-minute rule for public comment.
Oh, that's what I need. I forgot something.
I thought that was still in
You can
effect.
speak once for no. There is,
And it's very difficult for people to understand. Well, wait, why won't you answer my question? Why can't I? Why will you not tell me? I mean, I know that sounds a little like a child.
Yeah, I have two at home.
I know. See, you're familiar with this, and so you know the value.
At home, I can keep them quiet. Look. Here's what. I'll speak to each one of them individually and get their feeling on. Because individually, I have faith in the truth. As a group, I don't know their interactions. I have spoken to two of them, and I think that individually I can get them to open up about how they want to have this discussion. You know, whether they want it on their own terms and report to us, or they want to sit with us in this, this whole gallery of, them sitting, everybody looking at their backs and, cringeworthy type thing. Because I have a lot of faith and respect for them, but they're in a bad spot. Are they saying, hey, we messed up, we don't want to admit it? Or are we saying, I will speak to each one of them and one-on-one find out their opinion of how to handle their concerns if they truly have them. And then I will report back whether we want to have a joint meeting, they want to have a meeting, and put their issues on paper and give them to us, or
I
something
feel a
else?
little like this is like the kind of conversation that we have where we say, well, if you have a complaint about, you know, we've gone through this.
Sure,
If you have
absolutely.
a complaint, you know, put it in writing, but people go, ooh, I
Right.
feel a little,
Well, that's,
you know, people feel self-conscious, they
Right.
don't, and to Matt's point, and Dave's, it is, unfortunately, we live in a village where there is a media climate that is unkind to dissent on issues, and so I can see
I think
how.
they like the scent.
Yeah, they do, that's true. But they like to hold people up, and, you know, pelt them with stones.
You know, again, my concern is Karen, she's, you know, I don't want that atmosphere for the whole meeting, but, you know, it strengthen numbers, you know, if they're all if they all think it's a good idea, however they feel is the best way for us to hear them is what we'll do.
Just one last thing, it's not only the media that pelts people with stones, it's your neighbors too. And, you know, I've had my fair share of that as well. On that note, can we make a motion to adjourn, since it's
Yes. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.